Good evening and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 4th of August. Before we move to the formal agenda, there's two items I wanted to raise at Cabinet this evening. Firstly was around the publication today of the inspection of Medway's Youth Justice Service. If you haven't read it yet, and I'm sure Cabinet members have, it is a powerful read. I think it shows where we have continued to make good progress, but of course there is still further progress to make in other areas, and I think it's a fair report from that basis. The 12 recommendations we will be moving forward on. A number of those sit with us, but of course a number of those also sit with our partners as well. I want to take this opportunity to thank Adam Price, who I'll come to in a moment, but also our team here at Medway Council and our partners. I think particularly worth recognising that with everything else being discussed today, to make sure that from our perspective as someone dealing with victims, in particularly young victims as well, something as a recommendation we take incredibly seriously to continue to develop and embed a consistent, effective approach to this. Adam, I didn't know if there's anything else you want to add as statutory portfolio holder.
No, I think you've covered it well. It's the Youth Justice Service is interagency working, so it's ourselves, it's the like police and like probation, and I think it showed where we've come on really well since the last inspection, but it also sets out where we need to double our efforts just to be able to get into that good territory. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. The other thing I wanted to update colleagues on, of course, since feels like a long time, since we last met as a cabinet, of course, government have reached their decision on local government reorganisation. And of course, we've had a change of Prime Minister as well. A lot happens in between cabinet meetings in Medway. And I think it's worth raising those 2 points together because, of course, what we now want to be focusing on is two things. Firstly, getting on with the job of delivering good quality services for Medway residents between now and the 31st of March, as we have been doing since May 2023. But also having one very strong eye on devolution. And I welcome the fact that we now have a situation where all 14 councils are clear and unequivocally in support of a foundation strategic authority. And I think from many perspectives, including my own, I think I'd like to see us go further and faster. And I know certainly other colleagues across England, where perhaps they were scheduled to have elections in 2028 for their mayor, they're calling for those elections to happen early as well. So we will be writing as 14 council leaders to the new Prime Minister, the new Secretary of State, and others within government departments to say very clearly, we welcome the fact of clarity around local government reorganisation. Of course, not the preferred approach of this administration, but we always supported for councils, but most importantly from across the 14 councils, a clear message to say, let's get on as quickly as possible for all the reasons we've talked about here before on the issue of devolution. So I will, of course, keep colleagues informed of that. I'm really pleased we've got a all-member briefing on the 11th of August, where we'll be talking about both devolution and local government reorganisation. And I want to take this opportunity to thank officers who have worked diligently and hard on both the work for local government reorganisation to date and indeed that ongoing work. The work hasn't stopped. If anything, the hard work now begins, to use that well-worn phrase, but also members of the cross-party working group on local government reorganisation and devolution, which has restarted its meetings and again will be meeting on the 11th of August as well. That said, let's move to the agenda itself for tonight. There is a lot on the agenda. I will propose that we'll probably take, depending on length of debates, we'll probably take a short 5-minute adjournment around agenda item 10 or 11, depending on where we get to with the agenda. There are some big items in there. I know cabinet members will want to say a lot of things on there. So let's firstly move to apologies for absence. I've had apologies tonight from Nina, Nina would be happy to share that she's currently at a memorial service. You'll be aware of the very tragic circumstances with mountaineers lost and who have passed away. They were known personally, one of them known personally to Nina and her family, so we send our thoughts and solidarity to Nina, who's attending that tonight. And Harinder will be with us in about 20 minutes' time. He's finishing off an interview process for Pride in Place, which is fantastic. Are colleagues happy for me to sign the record of decisions of the 30th of June? Thank you. Are there declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and other significant interests? No. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on then to the first substantial item, which is around questions. This session we have no questions from the public. We do have a number of members' questions. We've been given written notice that Councillor Spalding wouldn't be attending tonight, but I would say I said that we would give him a verbal update on the answer as well. And as we've only got 5, I think we'll look to finish those all off in succession. So I'll take question A. I can't see Councillor Andrew Lawrence here, so I'll take the question as read. And Luella, over to you, recognising that, of course, we have got the substantial agenda item. Simon is going to take this. Thank you. We did talk about that as well. Simon's going to take the question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. And thanks to Councillor Lawrence for his question. Oh, my computer's playing up. For his question, it's in relation to an item later on the agenda, and it's about the gypsy traveller location at Wigmore. So thank you for your question regarding provision for gypsy and traveller families. This report has been prepared in the context of the local plan examination and the outcome of the appeal decision last year on the former Park and Ride site at Wigmore. The published report refers to requirements in national planning policy to provide the needs of gypsy traveller households. The local plan inspectors have requested that the council consider how it can increase the certainty of supply for gypsy and traveller pitches over the plan period. The council's review of its land for the local plan inspectors has identified potential use of the Wigmore site to contribute towards supply in the plan period. Subject to the outcome of the Cabinet's decision on the report this evening, should the site be supported as a potential allocation in the local plan for this specific purpose, the planning service would hold a focused consultation on this as a proposed modification to the submitted plan. If agreed by Cabinet, there will be a planning application that will be the subject of public consultation as well. One final point I would add that Councillor Lawrence refers to the 88 lost homes on the Blowers Wood site. The owners of the land there, and one of them is here this evening, has written to us and contacted saying they have absolutely no intention of not building the homes there at some point, and they're more than happy and only have come and contacted us in the light of this question being raised. They certainly want to continue with the development on the site and are happy to work with the council to that effect as best as possible in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. And just as a point of information, very happy to receive a letter from the individuals there. And just to confirm publicly, that has been circulated to all Cabinet members within about half an hour of it coming through. So thank you very much for that. And obviously, we'll hear much more on that item later on this evening at agenda item 8. Councillor George Perfect joins us for question B. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Whilst your government is now completely focused on the north at the expense of everywhere else, Medway Council, as evidenced from these papers, has a significant in-year revenue gap. It was also shortchanged by £8 million by the government at the start of this year through the Fairer Funding Review. When is the Leader of the Council due to meet the new Prime Minister and Secretary of State to ask them both for a fairer funding settlement for Medway? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for your question. It's worth noting that in the first 10 days of party leader Andy Burnham and subsequently Prime Minister Andy Burnham, he's been not only in the southeast but in Kent twice, both in Gravesend, and I was very pleased with a number of colleagues here to welcome him to his first meeting as Labour Party leader. And you will be aware there is a protocol around party leaders and prime ministers changing on the same day. And then subsequently over the weekend he was again in Dover looking at what is a national issue which happens to be in our region of Kent and Medway. So I think, if anything, he's focused on Kent, and long may that continue. To come to the heart of your question, which is a legitimate question around funding for this council, I don't need to remind you or anybody else of the funding settlements that we as a council received for a number of years from the previous governments from 2010 to 2024. Colleagues will recall that, not my words, but the words of the former leader of this council, made it clear there was a 91% cut in the revenue support grant since 2010. So from that perspective, of course, trying to catch that up is important. I welcome the fair funding review. I welcome the multi-year settlement. Is there more to do to fix the finances of local government? Absolutely, yes, there is. I'm really pleased that we've got back both Angela Rayner and Jim McMahon, good friends of Medway, and I look forward to working with both of them in particular, alongside colleagues in Treasury and indeed the Prime Minister, who I know takes a keen interest in what's happening here in Kent and Medway. Thank you for the question. Let's move on to question C. As I say, we had noticed Councillor Chris Spalding wouldn't be present today, so Simon, over to you for an answer, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this question is in relation to the hot weather and particularly an impact on buses. Thank you very much for your question. I agree that the welfare and safety of bus drivers are extremely important, particularly during periods of hot weather. Bus drivers provide an essential service to our communities across Medway, and their well-being is closely linked to the safe and reliable operation of local bus services. Whilst employee welfare is a matter for individual bus operators as employers, I would expect all operators serving Medway to have appropriate measures in place to protect their staff and meet their health and safety responsibilities. Through the Council's close working relationship with bus operators, including the Medway's Enhanced Bus Partnership and the delivery of our bus service improvement plan, we maintain regular dialogue on a range of issues affecting local bus services. Officers also share relevant weather warnings with operators to support operational planning during periods of extreme weather. In light of the concerns raised, I have asked officers to discuss this issue with operators through our established partnership arrangements and to seek assurance that appropriate measures are in place to support driver welfare during periods of extreme weather. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you very much. Next question is from Councillor Habib Tijan. I can't see Habib in the audience, so I'll take the question as read. The answer to which is no. And as a further supplementary to that answer of no, of course, there were 4 legitimate proposals put forward, all of which were funded by taxpayers, 3 of which were not chosen. It's perfectly legitimate for the taxpayers' funding of 3A, which I believe Councillor Habib Tijan supported, along with 4D and indeed 5A. Work was done on all of those. It's worth saying as well, Council option 1A, which was proposed by Kent County Council, was explicitly spoken about in the decision letter by Steve Reid, the now former Secretary of State, and was very clear on his view as to whether that was a legitimate option as well. But to answer the question directly, no. Let me move to question E, Councillor Mark Joy, and the question will be to Councillor Tracy Coombs. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you. Could the portfolio holder please provide the persistent absence statistics for each of the last 3 completed academic years? In giving your answer, please could you provide the attendance statistics broken down by school type, namely primary and infant school, secondary school, SEND school, and post-16-18, and highlighting the figures for looked after children. The actions Council is taking to improve attendance across Medway schools, and how both the local authority and maintained schools and Academy Trust are being held to account, and whether, with regard to the second one, whether they're supporting the held to account.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you very much for your question. So Medway's overall attendance figures have improved over the last completed academic years and are in line with national figures at 93.3%. Persistent absence is defined as pupils missing 10% or more of school sessions, and this is reduced in Medway's mainstream primary schools over the last 3 completed academic years, for which we have validated data, from 18.5% in 22-23 to 16.4% in 23-24 to 14.9% in 24-25. Within secondary schools, this has also improved, reducing from 26.3% to 25.3% to 22.6% over the same period. For the same measure, in special schools, persistent absence has been recorded as 36.8% in 22-23, 32.8% in 23-24, and 33.4% in 24-25. For children in care, persistent absence rate overall reduced from 25.7% in 22-23 to 24.5% in 23-24 to 22.9% in 24-25. Throwing a lot of numbers at you here. In primary schools, it reduced from 16% in 23-24 to 15% in 24-25, and in secondary schools, it increased from 29% to 32%. Phase-specific data isn't available for children in care who are attending special schools or post-16 settings, and data for the current academic year has not yet been validated by the Department for Education. Medway Council continues to work closely with schools through its attendance service, providing support, challenge and training to improve attendance outcomes in schools. This includes regular communication with schools, ongoing monitoring of attendance data, targeted support meetings where attendance is a concern, dissemination of good practice, and early intervention for pupils at risk of becoming persistently absent. The attendance team works closely with health, social care and other partners to identify and address barriers to attendance, while supporting schools to implement sustainable improvement strategies and fulfil their statutory attendance responsibilities. Both local authority maintained schools and academies are held to account through regular attendance monitoring, data analysis, school engagement meetings and targeted challenge where concerns are identified. Officers work directly with school leaders to agree improvement actions and provide support, while also working with academy trusts and regional partners to secure improvements where attendance outcomes remain a concern.
Thank you very much, Tracy, and thank you for the question, Mark. An issue which many of us take a keen interest in, attendance is critical. So thank you for the question and indeed the answer. So just for clarity, my plan is we'll take from this item through to item 9, and then we'll call a brief 5-minute adjournment, and then we'll get on with the rest of the agenda. As I say, there's a lot to get through tonight, but I do think a brief adjournment there will be helpful. Let's take item 5 then. Over to you, Luella. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So tonight we're starting off with 2 papers from the HRA Landlord Services, the governance group activities for the year and the annual performance of the HRA. So first of all, thanks to officers led by Bex, Wilcox and Adam Spokes and their teams, not just for the reports today, but the ongoing work and commitment to the service. So I'll start off with the governance group activities. The group meets quarterly and brings together a range of stakeholders, including Simon and myself. We've got cross-party representation with Councillor Tajan, senior officers and the chair and deputy chair of the tenants panel. So I want to thank all the members of the group for their work over the year. Throughout the year, the group has continued to provide robust scrutiny and oversight of the HRA, the Housing Revenue Account, landlord service. This has included monitoring performance across a broad range of areas, including repairs and maintenance, and we have particular focus on damp and mould cases reported under Arab's law, as well as the cases that fall outside of that formal reporting framework, but nevertheless, they deserve prompt action. So there's the compliance across the big 6 safety areas of gas, electric, fire, water, asbestos and lift safety, energy performance and sustainability improvements, tenant satisfaction, complaints handling and the management of antisocial behaviour cases, tenant engagement and involvement, rent arrears alongside the support available to help residents to sustain their tenancies, which is equally important, void properties, and the group has focused particularly on, we've had close scrutiny on trying to bring down the length of time those properties are out of action, and this is focused not just on the repairs but the whole process from start to finish. So from the advertising of it, showing people around and trying to get them filled as soon as possible so they're returned to use quickly. In addition, the governance group has maintained a focus on the action set out in the continuous improvement plan that we have with the regulator following the inspection, with a journey towards the potential upgrading to a C1. So during this year, members of the governance group, together with representatives from the tenants panel, have participated in a workshop with Savills to review the 30-year HRA business plan. The group examined the range of future scenarios. We've stress tested the plan against potential challenges, also opportunities. We've talked about our growth ambitions, because obviously we want to grow our council housing stock, future financial pressures and strategic priorities for the housing service. So as chair of the group, I wanted to just highlight a couple of significant achievements where we're progressing. Firstly, the 2.5 million programme of improvement works that you'll see at St Albans estate that's underway. That's quite notable by all the scaffolding there. The major investment includes the replacement of balconies, upgrades to fire doors, enhanced insulation measures and a wide range of improvements to the communal areas, all of which will improve safety and quality of life for those residents now, but also future residents. Secondly, the regulatory and financial due diligence that's commenced on a proposed transfer of registered providers' housing stock that we spoke about previously. That's obviously subject to the necessary approvals, and this would make an important contribution towards meeting housing demand across Medway and shows this administration's commitment to growing our council housing stock. And then finally, the continued growth of new homes within the HRA. So that's exceeded the targets this year that were set out in the 10-year HRA development strategy, again showing this administration's ongoing commitment to increasing the supply of high quality, affordable housing for Medway residents. So a full review of the year's activity and performance is set out within the report before us today, and I'll ask you to note the contents.
Thank you very much indeed. Any colleague? Simon, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks, Luella, for the report and for the officers for the report and the work they do. I just wanted to really endorse the comments made by Luella on how effective the HRA has become, certainly since I've been attending the meetings. The level of detail of the information that we get and the discussions are in depth, all targeted towards the end product, the outcome, if we're looking at, which is the quality of life of the tenants themselves. That's really what this is all about, and we can certainly see that in the reflections back from them, the levels of engagement that we get with them, with all the door knocking and the other sort of work that they do. That's the kind of thing, and it's that detail and commitment of the officers particularly I would like to sort of highlight, how you can see how dedicated they are to that commitment to the residents, but also commitment to other issues like environmental issues and such like that, and the redevelopment. And as this service grows, the impact on the wider community, when I've said this about 100 times, but this is really the benchmark that we expect of the housing sector in general. And this is where it starts. And we're always looking to improve and seeking ways to make what we do better. And we should expect the same of all the housing, social and private sector housing providers across Medway. And we'll be seeing that as the evening goes on. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa.
Thank you for the report, Luella. And I think, like Simon, I really want to commend the work that you and the housing team have done in making sure that residents' voice is real in these innovations. The HRA is not just a concept, it's something that actually drives and innovates the type of housing that we want to provide for our tenants. And having that tenant voice there very strongly, taking time to go and visit people and find out how the services are directly impacting them by talking to them face to face, I think is a piece of innovation that has really turned a result. And that's why there's much better commitment to all of the tenants panels, to governance, to turning up to events, and it's been very welcome to see the housing team at all of our summer festivals and events, actually meeting people in the street when they're enjoying themselves and making sure that they understand what services are available. In fact, I can remember at the Love Gillingham weekend seeing somebody who was a victim of domestic abuse actually being taken care of and housed on that day while she was in Gillingham High Street. So I think all of those things are serious and welcome innovations that are making a difference and encouraging people to believe that things can improve, and when they do, they can expect a very high standard from the council.
Thank you. Before I go back to Luella, let me say 2 or 3 quick things. I mean, this is fantastic work, and I want to recognise yourself as our portfolio holder, Luella, for your great work and passion and dedication. Welcome the fact that we have both Simon and indeed Habib. Again, having a cross-party approach to this, I think is important. It gives that strong message to anyone who's watching to say, absolutely, we want to work collaboratively and you know, senior officers again. So this has been taken seriously by this administration. I want to particularly thank the chair and deputy chair of the tenants panel, Maxie and Mick, who do a fantastic job. And welcome again. We've talked about it here previously, but I can't shout about this enough. You know, £2.5 million investment into St Albans Close. Huge investment into a site which is in a reasonable condition, but will be in a far better condition at the end of this approach. I wonder whether any thought had been given as to, obviously we are looking to bring on board over 700 potential properties from another organisation who I think we can name publicly now, but I won't, but everyone knows who it is. I wonder whether there might be an interim option of having a third tenant panel member specifically from that housing when it's in our tenure to again hear those specific voices as well, because again, I think that would be a helpful addition to the panel, along with our long-standing tenants who have been Medway Council tenants for a long time. So something to consider. But certainly I think something that would be welcomed and gives that peace of mind, further peace of mind to those tenants, many of whom are quite excited about becoming council tenants. Actually, if you look at social media, who worked out who it was long before we could talk about it. So yeah, from that perspective, a huge congratulations to the whole team. And of course, I say particularly Bex, who does an amazing job as our head of housing. Back to you, Luella.
Oh, thank you very much. In terms of, can you hear me? Thank you everyone for your comments and praise for the team, they deserve it. In terms of your suggestion there, that would be very welcome, and actually when the time comes of anyone who lives in those properties joining the tenants panel, potentially joining the governance group. So I've just asked the Cabinet to note that report, and I'll move on to the next one.
Thank you. We'll take the noting of that. Are colleagues happy to note the report? Thank you. Let's move on to the next item. Back to you, Luella.
So the next one is the performance of the housing revenue account. So this is the actual performance of the service. This report highlights a year of continued improvement, strengthened oversight and clear focus on delivering better outcomes for our tenants. I'd like to take the opportunity to recognise the hard work again of officers and our contractors and tenant representatives who continue to drive improvements across the service and with a view, as Simon said earlier in the last report, to making the conditions and lives better for our tenants. The performance of the HRA continues to be scrutinised on a quarterly basis by both the Tenants Panel and the HRA Governance Group. Since the inspection, performance data has been reported quarterly to the Regulator of Social Housing, with ongoing engagement between the regulator and the HRA senior leadership team. In addition, performance is monitored through the One Medway Council Plan and is reported publicly on a quarterly basis. Alongside these formal arrangements, HRA performance has been reviewed monthly through meetings involving myself as a portfolio holder, Jill James as the Assistant Director of Culture and Community, our Chief Housing Officer Bex Wilcox, and the Landlord Head of Service, which are Adam Spokes and Martin Barr. This ensures the areas of concern are identified quickly and that improvement actions remain on track. One area that continues to receive close attention is repairs performance. The service has experienced an increase in the number of repair jobs raised, partly due to the introduction of the new repairs contract, and under the new arrangements, a separate job is raised for each trade involved, rather than several trades being assigned to a single job. So when you see the report, you'll see the numbers have increased That is the reason why. This provides much more accurate data. It's allowing the service to identify trends, monitor performance for particular trades, and target improvements more effectively. Increased tenant engagement has also contributed to a greater number of repairs being identified and reported, giving us clearer understanding of the condition of our homes and allowing issues to be addressed more promptly. So the service has also implemented True Compliance System, which is a new thing they've got on to be able to really manage oversight and management of the Big Six compliance activities. So I'm pleased to report very strong compliance reporting, as you can see in the report, across those six. Maintaining safe homes for our tenants remains, again, our highest priority, and these figures demonstrate the significant effort being achieved in each and sustaining compliance. During 2025 and 26, the service continued its extensive programme of stock condition surveys, decency surveys, housing, health and safety rating system assessments, it's normally said H8SRS, and energy performance certificate surveys. Over the year, over 1,000 stock condition surveys, over 200 decency surveys, 1,200 HHSRS and over 200 EPC surveys. So as at the end of March, the stock condition survey coverage had continued to improve, with valid 5-year stock condition compliance reaching 75%, over 75%, and in addition, many properties have undergone void inspections, decency surveys, and that further strengthens our understanding of knowing our stock, and we know what condition they're in. So it's not just knowing our tenants, it's knowing our stock as well. They're both vitally important. The service remains on track to achieve its target of 100% valid 5-year stock condition survey coverage by December 27, and is currently progressing ahead of schedule, so hopefully it'll be before then. The service continues to take a proactive approach to identifying and addressing damp and mould. As I said previously, officers work closely with contractors to investigate concerns and take prompt action where necessary. The rollout of the remote, you may have seen before, the ICO devices, remote devices that monitor the environment in the properties, is proving particularly valuable. So not only for actually damp and mould, but we've seen recently some of the data that's coming back as not only helping us to identify damp and mould at an early stage, but during this really hot weather, we are being able to identify homes, the people who may be really vulnerable to overheating in their properties. And that has recently resulted in our tenancy engagement officers actually visiting those people and doing welfare checks, and also offering support and advice on how to cool their properties. So we wouldn't have known that if we didn't have these devices. So they're really important. The report also highlights progress in planned maintenance and rent collection, and I'd like to particularly note the success of the tenancy sustainment officers, whose work with tenants has resulted, and alongside the welfare and benefits team, in over 150,000 being secured and paid directly into rent accounts, helping maintain their tenancies whilst reducing arrears. Tenant satisfaction remains a key measure of success, and during the year, this year's tenant satisfaction measures, the survey was commissioned to better understand residents' views on the service. So some encouraging findings were the tenants who had engaged in the big door knock were more likely to report that they were satisfied across the measures. Follow-up calls made to tenants who indicated through the survey that had made a complaint, so we were able to address those. Complaints training has actually been delivered across the service and will now form part of the annual training programme, and they'll be continuously reviewed by the tenant scrutiny panel. The largest increase in satisfaction related to the time taken to complete repairs was up by 3.5%, and perception that the landlords treat tenants fairly with respect was up by 2.7%. So you can see a trend, we're getting better. I've just carried on giving you these good news. The survey's continued to strengthen its approach to tackling antisocial behaviour. Key developments include 5 members of the service now trained mediators. That's a step forward. Programme of bite-sized trainers and has enhanced officers' understanding of risk assessments, action plans and non-legal interventions. Monthly legal surgeries have been introduced to provide advice on complex cases. Good neighbour agreements are now included with all new tenancies. Officers are attending multi-agency risk assessment conferences and community safety task force meetings to improve partnership working to achieve a better outcome for residents. Turning to complaints, the service has actively promoted the complaints process through social media, Housing Matters publications and the Big Door Knock programme. So as a result, complaint volumes have increased significantly, but we're not viewing that with a negative outcome. It demonstrates that tenants are more aware of how to raise their voice, how to sort of say what concerns they have, and it does provide opportunities for the service to learn and improve and put things right. Where the standards will have fallen short, we're putting it right. So it reflects a wider trend as seen across the housing sector. So to support this work, senior managers now review the complaints responses to ensure that they are clearly understandable by the tenant and that they're written in an empathetic way. So, you know, we're just improving all the time. Additional training is also being developed, including the use of tools to improve communications with residents. Finally, I'd like to place on record my thanks to the members of the Tenants Panel again. They continue to give their time, experience, insight and constructive challenge to the service, which is an ongoing commitment for not just for themselves, but for their neighbours, all the residents that live within HRA properties. And I know that officers, members and the fellow tenants appreciate the contributions that they make. So a full account of the report, I mean, I've given you quite a comprehensive account, but a full account of the report and all of the statistics are there available to you. So I'll ask you to note the contents.
Thank you very much, Luella. A huge catalogue of fantastic improvements. And again, I think with some of those statistics in particular, that's very clear for all to see. I'll take Teresa first, then Simon, then Tracy.
Thank you, Luella, and thank you to everyone who produced the report, but more importantly, to those involved in that work that you've described. I think that at the heart of that is something that perhaps the report doesn't mention, and that is kind of values and emotion of pride, of dignity, and determination to make things better. If we're proud of our properties and proud of our services and have the determination that you have shown with the team to make improvements, that gives people the ability to trust that the council will help them sort things out and that when they report something, actually that will be heard and acted upon in a timely way. And I think that that has changed. Some of the other initiatives, like being a good neighbour, are incredibly important. You know, they're just a word or a line in a report, but actually they're at the very heart of what it means to live in a happy and safe community, so that people understand that when they're lucky enough, actually, to become an HRA tenant, there's an expectation on our part that they will step up to our expectations, that they'll be, you know, proud of their property, play their part in keeping it in good order, and treat their neighbours well, which is really important. So I think those kind of values and emotions that are driving those changes and innovations are really important too, and it's been really good to hear about them tonight.
Thank you. I'll take Simon next, then Tracy.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, we've heard quite a welter of information. This report is absolutely comprehensive. It gives you a picture of the kind of meetings that we have that go on for quite a long time as we plunge into the detail of what needs to be done. I think I just want to pick out out of all the dry bones of details and stats and stuff like that, some of the meaning behind this, the stock quality under assessment management. I'm going to read this bit. The expectations are that the HRA must have an accurate, up-to-date and evidenced understanding of the condition of their homes that reliably informs the provision of good quality, well-maintained and safe homes. And then it adds on the end, for tenants. It's always at the end of everything they do. It's what is best for the people who have to live in these flats, who want to live in these flats. And it's that quality. And it goes on to talk about decent homes compliance of 97.5%, which is up on last year. But even that, the staff aren't happy. That's not good enough. It needs to be just a bit better, and it can be, and they're always looking for ways to make it better. So I just wanted to sort of highlight that as this sort of example of how we do things. And also one other little thing that I really found quite amazing at the last meeting, right, where they talked about the adoption of new technology. Luella referred to damp and mould and how the increasing use of remote monitoring devices is flagging up issues in people's homes where we can react much more quickly than waiting for somebody to have a serious problem and then we have to, and then their health is suffering. We can pick that up really quickly and early. So the more of that technology, which we know works through the work of Kindy, it works here as well, and it's fantastic that we're adopting those things. So I just wanted to thank Luella for her leadership in all this. You can see it writ large how much she cares about it, and placing the people at the heart of everything we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Tracy.
Thank you, and thank you for that real insight into the work of the HRA. I was so impressed with the difference that technology is making and making sure that these homes are well looked after, are safe, are secure. And the difference that these improvements make to the lives of our tenants can't be measured. The peace of mind of knowing that they live in a property that's safe, secure, that's well looked after, and is so important. It gives residents that sense of pride and ensures that the place that they live in really feels like home. So thank you very much for your leadership on this. It's making such a difference to our residents in Medway.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Before I go back to Luella, this report is phenomenal. And I know you're not complacent. That's the key thing. Um, and we've spoken a lot about things like local government reorganisation. Uh, whoever is going to be running the 4 councils of Kent, I hope they look carefully and recognise that a unitary authority can be a great landlord and still year on year seek to make further improvements. This report shows just that. And if you wanted an example of a genuine one Medway approach, look at paragraph 5.56. We're going to talk later on about the climate change plan, the annual review of that. We've got our own housing stock, more energy efficient, more cost effective for residents at a time when energy bills will be something they are concerned about. So again, we're making sure we're tackling the climate emergency, making sure there's more pounds left in Medway Council tenants' pockets. That's one paragraph of a huge report which shows time and time and time again this administration, you personally, Luella, with your leadership, at the forefront of making sure that people, if they're living in a council house, it's something they're proud of because we're proud of the service we deliver. Back to you.
Thank you everyone for your comments and your interest in how the services performing. Your comments are really valued, and yeah, I'm just really proud of the work they've done this year. So I'll just ask you to note the report.
Thank you very much. Are colleagues happy to note the report? Thank you. Perhaps as a second recommendation, perhaps if the Chief Executive and I were to write to the housing team specifically on this item to recognise the fantastic progress made to date. If the Chief Executive happy with that, we'll take that forward as well, because I do think the recognition of the staff who are delivering that on a daily basis shouldn't be underestimated. So thank you for that as well. Let's move on to agenda item 7. Back to you, Luella. The private sector licensing, additional and selective licensing schemes. Over to you.
Thank you, Vince. So first of all, I want to thank the officers for this report and the work with Transform, who undertook the consultation for us here. So the report seeks to approve and formally commence the proposed additional licensing scheme in the wards of Chatham Central and Brompton, Fort Pitt, Gillingham North, Gillingham South, Luton and Watling. The report also seeks your approval to introduce a selective licensing scheme in those same wards together with Strood North and Finsbury. So just to remind members, additional licensing applies to houses in multiple occupation or HMOs, while selective licensing applies to other types of private rented accommodation that fall outside of the HMO definition. The Council had appointed Transform UK to undertake a formal statutory consultation, and this report sets out the consultation process in full, together with the outcomes and responses received. The consultation ran from the 23rd of March to the 4th of June and was promoted extensively throughout Medway through a wide range of channels that included a 1-minute Medway, Medway Matters, the Council's social media and various communication platforms, and direct correspondence with stakeholders, and also advertising, I'm sure you saw, on bus stops and on the back of buses. So both online and paper versions of the consultation were made available, ensuring that everyone who wished to participate had that opportunity to do so. In addition, member briefings were held alongside 2 public consultation events. Full details of the engagement activity and the responses received, and also the Council's response to those comments, are set out in the report. The consultation sought views on the introduction of both the additional and selective licensing schemes, and it asked respondents for their views on property licensing conditions, the proposed licence fees, any potential discounts that could arise, with landlords with more than one property, the objectives of the scheme, perceptions of poor housing conditions and antisocial behaviour in Medway, and it also sought the views on issues specific to the HMO sector, including property management and maintenance, health and safety, overcrowding, noise, nuisance and antisocial behaviour, and also landlords' responsibilities. Members can see the detailed consultation findings within the report. However, I would highlight that there's a strong level of support from residents and businesses for these proposals. 72% of residents and businesses who had responded, for example, supported the introduction of selective licensing, while 74% of the residents and businesses supported the introduction of the additional licensing for HMOs. I'd also like to remind colleagues, while we're bringing these proposals forward, the purpose of these schemes is to improve standards within the private rented sector in those wards identified by an earlier feasibility study as being most in need of intervention due to poor housing conditions and levels of deprivation. Good, responsible landlords have nothing to fear from these proposals. The proposed fees for selective licensing cost equates less than £3.25 a week, while additional licensing of HMOs is less than £6.20 per week, and that's before any discounts have been applied. The introduction of additional and selective licensing will also support the delivery of a number of key council priorities and strategies, including the One Medway Council Plan, the Medway Community Safety Partnership Community Safety Plan, the Medway Joint Local Health and Wellbeing Strategy, and the Housing Strategy to 2030. Importantly, we're not operating in isolation. A number of the authorities across the country have already implemented licensing schemes and have demonstrated benefits. For example, Newham Council has renewed its scheme and it's now in its 3rd phase. And the authority describes licensing as one of its principal mechanisms for identifying rogue landlords and driving improvements in their housing standards. Nottingham City Council has reported wider benefits for neighbourhoods and improved wellbeing for tenants. And Liverpool City Council has demonstrated how licensing can support large-scale intelligence gathering, targeted enforcement activity, and significant investment in improving housing standards. So the experience of these authorities shows that a well-designed, selective and additional licensing scheme can be highly effective tools for improving housing conditions, increasing landlord compliance, identifying rogue landlords, and enabling proactive enforcement. The evidence suggests that such schemes deliver measurable benefits not only for tenants but also for neighbourhoods, communities and wider public services. They provide local authorities with the intelligence and oversight needed to regulate an increasingly complex private rented sector and help ensure that residents have access to safe, decent and well-managed homes. So I now ask members to support the proposal for option 2, which is to implement the additional and selective licensing schemes in the designated wards as prescribed.
Thank you. I'll take Teresa first, then Simon, then Harinder.
Thank you, Luella. And I know that a huge amount of work, again, has gone into this since our administration came into power in Medway, because it's been a long-held ambition to send a message to partnership landlords in the private sector that we expect extremely high standards, some of the standards like those that you've already described for our HRA properties. And I think contrary to what some people believed, this has been welcomed by lots of landlords. It shows that the council...
The great responsibility, and that responsible landlords understand that and recognise that and deliver on that. But you can't overestimate the impact that poor housing has on health, on life chances, and actually the knock-on effect on community safety that poor housing has on the wider community. And we are not going to tolerate the greed and neglect of a minority of poor landlords who inflict those conditions on their tenants and the consequences they inflict on the wider community. I'll finish by doing what I often do, which is to talk about one of my Glasgow heroes. So I come from a city of many famous red Clydesiders, but one of the most famous people to come out of that movement was a woman called Mary Barber. And Mary Barber, during the First World War, led rent strikes in 1915 to stand up against unscrupulous landlords who were taking advantage of women who had been left to look after the house while men went off to fight in the Great War. And her sort of supporters would fill the communal stairwells of places that were threatened with a visit by sheriff's officers. And the banners would say, "God help the sheriff's officer that enters this close." She stood up with her army for tenants. And not everyone has a Mary Barber to stand up for them. And in Medway, we're doing that for people. And she has been honoured relatively recently with one of the few statues that have been raised to a woman in the city of Glasgow. It's one of the few statues that sits at Govan Cross. It's also one of the few statues that we don't put cones on the top of. Another great Glasgow Medway mash-up tradition. But it's a mark of how far we've come, that we don't need individuals like Mary Barber to stand up for those rights. We're doing it for residents.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Before I go back to Luella, as others have said, that this has long been an ambition of this administration before we were the administration. And I'm really welcome. Thank you to Simon for recognising the work of Nashaba in particular. The very first thing that we put on the forward plan was this. And we've gone through the consultation processes appropriately. I think there's some interesting outcomes, and people will take their own conclusions as to why 71% of landlords don't want this to happen. I want to work with the 29%, because actually I know the 29% are doing good stuff in our community. We'll work with our council officers, we'll work with other professionals, we'll share best practice, we'll not rip people off. And if you're in the 71%, maybe move over to the 29% pretty quickly. So this is important. It has been a long journey to get here, but I'm incredibly proud this administration is delivering this. There are those politically who oppose it, and they're entitled to their view, but I don't agree with them. I think we're right on this, and I think the people of Medway would agree with us as well. Luella, back to you.
Thank you very much, Vince. And yes, as Simon said, I think I said it the last time we brought a paper about this particular matter. It was an ambition of the Medway Labour group before taking administration. And as you have said, it was one of the first things that you put on there. My predecessor, Nashaba Khan, very passionate about it. But of course, these things have taken such a long time, which is why she became an MP before it came to fruition. But obviously, I've taken it over and followed it through. And if you just go back and think from the start, over 3 years, we had to have an initial study, then a feasibility study, then the consultation. These things take time. So thank you, everybody, for your comments and support. The decision will give us the opportunity to improve housing standards for our residents across those wards. And remember, that includes everyday residents, but it includes also our very vulnerable residents. So supporting responsible landlords is another thing this will do, and it will create safer and healthier communities across Medway. So I'd just ask you to support the recommendation.
Thank you. The recommendation is agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. We'll take the next item, and then we will have an adjournment after that. We've had one or two slight blackouts on the stream. Everything's been recorded, but we're now back live and online, but we'll take the adjournment just to check everything is okay as well. Thanks to the team for sorting that in the background. So I'm going to hand over for item 8 firstly to Simon. I'll then directly go to Luella after that, and then I'll open it up for wider contributions. Simon, over to you.
Thank you very much. So this item has sort of two elements to it, obviously with Luella talking around the housing and that side of element and what that means. And this has also got a lot of planning implications as well. And just like to stay at the start. I mean, as with the other items we've just been listening to around how much we are passionate about the condition of lives and people. This is all about our Marmot principles in many respects, making sure that the people that we are responsible for in our communities have as much care as possible. And housing first is a sort of mantra around the world in so many urban areas and across the world to make sure that people have decent homes and decent places to live. And this kind of follows that train in relation to the gypsy and traveller communities and the show people communities. The submission for the local plan was very clear, the inspectors were very clear about this, that we needed to address some issues around the provision of sites for gypsy traveller and travelling show people in Medway. We didn't have enough provision made for them, and how are we addressing that problem? And they're not asking us to provide a magic solution. They wanted to know exactly what we're doing in order to address this. And so what we've done is, in conversation with the planning inspector, we've come up with a number of ways of addressing this. And making sure that we don't leave anything out, and certainly we don't leave any of the people involved out of the process as well. So there's been consultation, there's been engagement as much as we possibly can. And I think just one issue around the Wigmore site, which will come up in a moment, about that engagement. This engagement with the communities involved, particularly at Wigmore, has been going on a weekly basis. The teams of staff involved have been brilliant, and I'm sure Luella will refer to that shortly. But you know, they really do care about what happens in everybody's lives in this respect. So what we've done is we had to carry out a new assessment in there, looking at a call for sites and also looking at assessing our own land. There is an addendum report. I can refer to that at this moment, if that's all right. So that came with the supplementary agenda here. And the addendum report sort of gives the detail on how we went about firstly carrying out the call for sites, which again, this is the second time within the local planning process we've carried out a call for sites. We've had no response. So there is no landowners in Medway, private landowners, who want land that they own to be used for gypsy and traveller accommodation. However, we do own quite a bit of land of our own, so we've also carried out a very detailed analysis of hundreds of sites that we are responsible for across Medway. We, as the sites were identified and what they were being used for and whether they were suitable or not was brought down, we ended up with 19 sites that we thought could be useful. But of those 19, only one of them really stands out, and that's the Wigmore site, and where we could actually provide proper standard of accommodation. So that's the planning process that's involved here. This will go into the consultation with the local plan, and there's the public consultation coming up in September and November on that, and it will be discussed in more detail there. The report goes on then to say a number of things. It asks to note all the work that's been carried out behind to get where we are now. It also asks us to make a decision and it gives us three options: a do-nothing option, which we don't really have a choice on because that would not be addressing the concerns of the planning inspectorate. It would also not be addressing the needs of the community that we're trying to serve as well. So do nothing, I don't think, is an option there really, although it's always put into this report. And then two other options. One is looking at the Wigmore site in detail and saying what is going to be provided there, how can we provide it, what are the needs of the people who are currently there. It's got 10 touring caravan sites potentially identified, and the cost is significant. It's £2.6 million of cost in terms of developing the site and bringing it forward. And the third option would be to look at how we would then expand the site, taking even more lands, but making sure that the quality and the standard and the landscaping and everything around it was of a quality that made this a good place for people from the gypsy and travelling community to live and have a home. So that's the three options that we'll be considering within this paper, and I welcome members' comments on it, and I'll hand over to Luella.
Thank you very much, Luella.
Thank you. So I may repeat what Simon's just said in ways, but that's because we're both on the report. So the report is setting out the steps that we need to address the shortage of gypsy and traveller accommodation in Medway, a need which has been clearly highlighted, as Simon said, by the Planning Inspectorate. So we all know that having an up-to-date local plan is vital for Medway. It ensures the development takes place in the most appropriate locations, supports our communities and helps us plan properly for future growth. for all of our communities. So the failure of previous Conservative administrations to bring forward an up-to-date local plan has left Medway vulnerable, with speculative development applications too often weighted in favour of developers. That's had a direct impact on residents across our towns and villages, and it's one of the reasons why progressing our local plan remains such an important priority. So this report gives us highlights of the extensive work, as Simon has already said, that's been undertaken to identify suitable locations for gypsy and traveller accommodation. This involves a number of stages, including the calling for sites, consideration of intensification of existing sites, and a review of the council's own land. As Simon's laid out, there were 19 left, and they were reviewed, and we saw how they'd reviewed them. So we're satisfied that they've had a thorough investigation. National planning policy is clear. Local authorities have a responsibility to identify and meet the accommodation needs of gypsy and traveller communities, and those needs must be reflected within our emerging local plan. The work outlined in the report is being undertaken not only because policy requires it, but because it is simply the right thing to do. Members will be aware of the history relating to this particular site following legal proceedings and an unsuccessful legal judgment to obtain possession. Subsequent planning permission was granted on appeal in June 2025. The site has for some time been occupied on an informal basis and lacks the permanent infrastructure that would be expected of a properly managed site. And the circumstances have changed significantly. So this is not a U-turn. It's the council responding responsibly to the lawful judgment and adapting to the reality of the situation before us. And that is for all Medway residents, including the families that live there and the whole gypsy and traveller community. By formalising the site, we can introduce proper licensing arrangements, establish rental agreements, provide appropriate infrastructure, and ensure effective management. This will create a safe, well-designed and controlled environment, both for the families living there, which include children, and for the wider community. So, as Simon has said, the report considers the three options, with the recommendation going with the third option. The estimated costs set out in the report are based on high-level assessments undertaken by a quantity surveyor. These costs include site clearance enabling works, groundworks, site levelling, road and hard standing, landscaping, communal areas, professional fees, planning and building control costs, utility blocks, noise mitigation measures, renewable energy technologies, lighting, fire safety, and all the necessary water, sewage and electricity connections. So it's a large amount of money, but it's a lot of work that needs to be done. Importantly, the development of permanent gypsy and traveller sites is eligible for grant funding, and officers will be actively pursuing all available funding opportunities to reduce the financial impact on the council. This report is about meeting our legal and planning responsibilities, supporting the delivery of an up-to-date local plan, and providing safe and suitable accommodation through a managed and sustainable approach. And it reflects the reality of the position we're in today and offers a practical way forward. So I would ask you to support the recommendations.
Thank you very much indeed, Luella. I'll take Theresa next.
Thank you, Luella, and I do support the recommendations and the significant investment that is recommended in the report to bring the Wigmore site up to where it should be. We've got friends from the site here, and notwithstanding the way that this started, they have been helpful and compliant in terms of being good tenants of that site, and they have faced difficulties with things like the lack of on-site water. And they have paid their way, and I think it's important to say that. You know, they have paid for the facilities that they have got, for sanitary facilities and for waste, and for that they are to be commended, and have settled actually into the Wigmore community, which is very welcome and something that we hope everybody who comes to Medway, however they choose to live their lives, is able to do. And I understand the frustrations that they've experienced, and it's been welcome that they've been able to work through Councillor Satinder Shokar, who's been, I think, a worthy and sincere advocate for their needs from the beginning, and long may that relationship continue. It's much better to set out what we're going to do properly than make compromises that won't last. We've heard the guidance from the planning inspector. We know that there has been a legacy of decades of under-provision, and actually from the last administration, if they want to be honest about it, a refusal to acknowledge the needs of this particular group, and to a failure, actually, to treat them with the same level of equality and dignity as we would expect to treat everyone else. That has changed under our Labour administration, but the wheels turn slowly. And that, I'm sure we all feel frustrations about that. But I think working together across the council with public health, with social care as well, with our health friends and neighbours, and of course with housing, this report shows a clear intention, a clear investment of what we're going to do. And we'll have to work with the families there because there will be disruption to them while this happens. But it's in the long-term interests of showing that we want all living facilities in Medway to be as decent as you described earlier, that we're prepared to make the investment and set out the way that we're going to do this.
Thank you. I can't see any other colleagues, so before I go back to Simon, I say 2 or 3 quick things from my perspective. There are 2 parallel issues here. Firstly is the issue of the ongoing work for the local plan. We've spoken in this cabinet meeting previously about the helpful initial letters from the inspectors. This talks about this particular area, so it's right as a cabinet we look at that, we look at the work, and again the information is laid out as to what has happened on that. So I welcome that clarification publicly here. I have no doubt that will be an area that during the inspection there will be conversation on, and I think that's important and right. We then look at the specifics of a site which is mentioned in here as well. And as Luella said in her opening remarks, we deal with the evidence that's given to us on the day that we're dealing with the decision making, and that evidence is different today from where we were at the start of this process. And actually, interestingly, from Mark Joy's question to Tracy earlier on, one of the things that was raised in some of those external legal processes was the very good attendance at local schools by the families and the children there, which again, I think we would all want to see all children getting the very best education, and attendance matters. So I know that was raised by one of the senior leaders of the school there, but also recognised by the legal processes and decision makers external of the council. The final thing I wanted to say very publicly was I welcome the letter that I received along with others, which I shared with all cabinet members ahead of tonight's meeting from the owners of Blowers Wood. I think it takes an honest and pragmatic approach, which I welcome. It's not a formal decision, but I'll be saying very clearly and very publicly here, the meeting that's been requested will happen. My understanding from emails is there is a likelihood that this decision may be called in. We won't be waiting for that call in for that meeting to happen. I want that to happen as quickly as possible for some of the reasons you've laid out in the letter. So thank you very much for your letter. Very helpful to receive that ahead of tonight, and I give an absolute commitment that we'll work through certainly the 5 key points that you've laid out in that, and say senior officers are hearing that directly. So it's not a formal decision of cabinet to have that meeting happen, but I'm saying that very publicly here. So on that basis, I as well will be supporting the decision that's been taken here. So thank you very much, colleagues, for that. I'll go back to Luella, and then to Herinda. Did you indicate? No, happy. I'll take you, Herinda, please. And then I'll go back to Luella and back to Simon, because it is an issue which covers both portfolios, and it's both important to hear from both. So I'll take Herinda first.
Thank you, Vince. I wanted to sort of note one of the other things that what this does, what this action means in that. So I was born and grew up in central Chatham, and as a result, I think a good 30% of my friends were from the travelling community in one way or another, and but the difference was they were either a generation 1 or 2 of being settled in housing, and there was always a tension, and often they would speak to it. And there's a particular family that I've always kept in mind whenever this topic came up. I won't name the particular family, but there was always a tension that they would raise about their wish to live and express their sort of community as travellers versus what they felt they were forced, well, not forced, but the situation they found themselves in being housed. But what this does is this allows for it means that that decision doesn't have to be there. They can live as travellers in the way that they would as they wish to live with that site, because that provision is being made. And so it does. I don't want to say it sort of. It sort of ticks something back in my history. It makes it does remind me of conversations I used to have in the childhood. That maybe explains where I'm coming from when these conversations have come up. So yes, fully support this. Thank you.
Absolutely. You and I, for 4 years, represented the White Road community together. There are a number of families who have who from the traveller and gypsy community, who have found a long-term home there. So those conversations I recognise firsthand from the community that we've represented for a number of years. Let me take Luella, and then I'll take Simon. We'll make a decision. We'll then call a brief adjournment. Luella.
Thank you for comments, everyone, particularly Teresa, for recognising the group who are living on the site at the moment. I appreciate that, and I appreciate also your recognition of Councillor Shoker, who has tried really hard in trying to get a solution here. So I recognise that. I also want to recognise our housing officers who are engaging with the community that live there for a positive outcome for all. So I just wanted to say those thanks before I pass back to Simon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luella. And then finally, Simon, to you.
Yeah, thanks to you very much, and thanks to everyone who's contributed to this conversation. I think it goes back to the idea that behind everything we do as a council is based upon trust and about this sort of investment. It's not about spending; it's about how we invest in our community, whatever it is, with the time of the officers, or whether it's financially, or whether it's time on an evening like this when we're making decisions, and setting some policies in stone and setting the investment fund in place. I'm hoping that is a sign of the trust that we can have with the community to show that we really care about this. This matters a lot to us. A number of people have mentioned Satinder. I would just mention I had 3 words written down to describe his approach to this: tenacious, passionate, and patient. I think that's the 3 words that come to mind. He has been very patient with us on this. I know how much he cares, but he's never stopped trying and campaigning on behalf of that community. So I'm looking forward to how this is going to look as we go forward. And if we're going to do this, we need to do it properly. That's the thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, colleagues. We have 3 recommendations. Obviously, recommendation 3 is to recommend to council, because we're adding to the capital programme. And recommendation 1 and 2 is, oh, please.
We have 2 further recommendations within the addendum report.
Oh, within the, yes. Thank you for that. That is helpful. But what we're doing is recommending both to council, but also taking some decisions. Just want to be clear on that the actual addition to the capital programme won't happen until October. And I say, I've had it indicated to me in at least 1 email that this decision may be called in, but they say particularly that commitment to the meeting with the owners of Blowers Wood, that will be happening regardless of that call in. That meeting will be scheduled as soon as practically possible. So on the basis of that, are colleagues happy to agree to recommendations as laid out in the papers? Agreed. Thank you. We'll take a quick 5 or so minute adjournment. Thanks, everybody. very much and welcome back to the second half of tonight's Cabinet meeting. We'll move straight on to agenda item 9, the Climate Change Action Plan 25 to 28. It's our year 1 update. Simon, over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me find my notes. Just to introduce the item, and I think, I mean, a lot of it speaks for itself, and it's not for decision making. This is an item for noting by colleagues. Just to give you a bit of background, back in August last year, you may recall that we had a refresh of our climate action plan. The refresh was based around a kind of a more comprehensive and inclusive approach to how we deal with climate issues and draw in everything from two sides. One is in relation to the council and its operation and how we operate as an organisation. What is our climate? What is our footprint on the world, and how do we address that from a sustainability, carbon impact point of view, all those factors. But then how do we address the issue of our community, and how do we bring them on board with all the ambitions and aims of climate? We are living in the middle of a flipping 4th heat wave of the year, so anyone who wants to deny this is happening is mad. And if you note that the BP is selling up their interest in the North Sea, and the Saudis are building nuclear power stations. Now, you wonder why they're doing that, and you can guess why. So we're in that world of climate change. So we have two areas of responsibility within that climate approach. One is about how we tackle this global warming and the impacts on biodiversity and all those sorts of things, and how we stop the trend as best we can. But having said that, it's already on us, as we know. So what's the resilience we're building into our communities to cope with the new world in which we live? Those are the two sides to our climate strategy. It has 5 priorities, and it's based upon international and national strategies and legislation. There is law behind some of what we have to do in this that goes up to international level as well. And it also fits in very neatly with our One Medway Council plan and our Marmot Place agenda as well, and a whole load of other strategies sort of come from it. So this climate change strategy sits within all that work that we do, to the point where we have set up our own officer board, which looks at how it fits in the council, and the engagement, and I'm going to say it again a bit later in a few minutes, the engagement from all parts of the council now is 100%. I don't come across any of our officers or members, apart from a couple of members on one particular party who don't know the world exists, I think, sometimes. But leaving that one, so that members of all parties, apart from one, and officers in particular, are all engaged with what we're trying to do. But from a pragmatic point of view, what is it can we do in the world in which we live, in the job that I have, in that kind of thing? So there's a full engagement. The 5 priorities, I'll just run through them very quickly. They're knowledge and empowerment, getting information out to the community and then demonstrating to them how they can make a difference. Clean, efficient and equitable energy, which fits into not only zero carbon, but it also fits into energy affordability and those people in our most deprived communities and how they can afford to live and have clean energy as well. Sustainable travel and transport, and as you know, we're working hard with the buses that we're doing, the bus companies. We're looking at integrated transport. The LC-WIP, the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, is out there and starting to be engaged with wherever we can. And then there's resource efficiency. That's about how we use the resources we have, in particular around waste management, but other uses. Can we reuse stuff? Can we repurpose? All that kind of thing. And then the final one, the 5th priority, is green and resilient Medway. How we build how we deal with our biodiversity crisis, which it really is a crisis, and how we also build resilience into our community from a nature-based approach, which is all the rage at the moment and really important way of doing it. As I said, we set up a corporate board for this to give it oversight. We also have 2 working groups. We have a members working group, which meets regularly. I know Zoe's passionately involved, 1 or 2 other members. We've got the parishes on that as well. And we try and do our own, in our wards, we try and do our own projects for climate change and how we can bring the community into that. But one of the most important roles of the members board, the members working group, is about being an ambassador for that messaging, that knowledge and empowerment priority. We are the ambassadors to get that message out there. The community working group has has just grown and grown and escalated. We approached a number of community organisations. We've got the Army on board, the Health Authority, we've got the hospital rather, we've got the universities are engaged with it, the Mid-Kent College, a load of other community groups, all engaged with the community working group and are hearing reports from officers on what we're doing, but they're also getting external involvement. And I'll mention in a moment, one of the things they focused on was energy, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So going through the report now, this is about not just maintaining sort of the things that we do, but how you sort of manage things and take things forward. We need to be efficient. So the report goes on to describe areas where we have taken action and done things, I think, already through there, and you can read all that. I won't go into the full detail of the report about what we've been doing, but the ONS committees have been engaged with this. Are being held to account on this as well in a couple of weeks' time. And such like that. And then we've got our 3 appendices are attached to this. One gives the detailed report on all the work done to date. In particular, and it's nice and there's lots of colour in there, which is great. This is how the team operates. I'll get to the team in a moment as well. But that's a really important report to go through if you can on that. Appendix 2 covers the risks involved of not doing it and where that fits in with the council risk register. And then the final one, something that is regularly asked about, which is details of greenhouse gas emissions for 2024. Full data is available there if anybody's interested, and we're doing well. We're cutting it wherever possible. It's gone down in Medway quite considerably over the last few years, so that's good news there. It's the decline has slowed slightly, so we need to pick things up a bit, but certainly since 2018 there's been a significant fall in our greenhouse gas emissions, which is good news. So finally, I just wanted to mention a huge thanks to our team of 3 who are absolutely passionate and dedicated officers. They love the work they do, and you'll have all seen them doing the rounds at the events over the last few weeks. They keep turning up everywhere we go. They're there again, putting the message out, getting plus. But behind the scenes, all 3 of them are highly expert and knowledgeable in this field in different ways, and they contribute hugely. We planted around, I think it's getting up to 3,000 trees have gone in the ground. One of our team is a landscape architect. So, you know, that's where that knowledge comes from, if you like, within the team. So it's that kind of approach that they've got. And we're seeing that sort of more and more delivery of the work that they're doing. But it really is about how we build on the work we've done. Now, I feel that we've got to the stage where we've embedded the need for change in our approach to climate. We've also embedded the need to understand what resilience means and how we retrofit our homes and all that kind of stuff. That's now, how do we now build on that and make more of it? This is not going to go away. It's something that we need to build on. I could talk all night, but I'll stop there. And
thank you very much. I'll take Teresa, then Zoe.
Yes, thank you, Simon. As you said, apposite on the hottest July, I think, for 90 years in England and 150 years in Wales. So it is really important to add, as you did, that anyone who denies that the climate is changing really needs to review their position as a matter of urgency. And Simon, thank you for your personal passion and expertise in this area, because I think it's really important for us to recognise that alongside the team. And I'm particularly grateful for the way that they show up at events, find different and innovative ways to explain the progress that they're making to the public, which I think, you know, is very attractive. They've sort of had some really good infographics, and obviously in the report, there's some incredibly comprehensive statistics showing that we are making progress and that this is a one Medway approach. You know, this runs through everything we do, from the housing that Luella has described, from the care home that we're building under care for Medway, from everything that we're doing at Gun Wharf. It's about sustainability and safeguarding our local climate, and by doing that, as you said, playing our part in the world. I wanted particularly to note the work of the Cosington Park Tree Nursery volunteers. That is an amazing project, people showing huge commitment to taking care of the trees, inviting other people in, regularly making sure that everything is maintained, and to have planted 3,000 trees. And I remember one of your mini lecturettes to me about the 10-degree difference that the shade of a tree can make to the climate outside and how important that shading is when we plant trees in schools, when we plant them on new housing estates. As part of our recent major developers meeting, we had a fantastic presentation from an organisation that I know you've been working with, who have invented a really innovative way of being able to plant trees so that the roots are reaching right down to the earth and drawing up water and making sure that the trees can live. And actually, all around us already, when we see that shallow-rooted grass has turned brown, the trees are still green. They're still providing shade. They're still an important part of our landscape. So the commitment within this plan to consistent tree planting and growing local trees in the tree nursery with the help of, as you say, the really comparatively tiny officer team, but all of the many enthusiastic volunteers is something to really be proud of. And actually, as the report says, gives hope to those who live in less good environmental circumstances. That's important for our Marmot work, as you rightly said. Having safe outdoor spaces, walking routes, places where you can get a bit of shade when you're moving around is important. It's not just decoration. It's all part of our commitment to looking after our local climate and, as I say, the world. So it's a really interesting report. I hope that all of the people in the local eco-hubs read it and understand that the council is working for and with them to make sure that things really move forward. And I'm very happy to support noting the report, but everything that goes on within it.
Thank you very much. Zoe?
Thank you. Yeah, you probably know that all of the members of the climate group have been given tasks to undertake in relation to climate change. And one of the things that we agreed to do last week was to reconnect with Fergal Sharkey to see whether he would come and talk to us in a public meeting again, because he's quite a charismatic person and feels very strongly about these issues. So we've written to him, and hopefully in the next few weeks or maybe months, we can organise another public meeting that we can host him with, this time being in the administration, as we weren't when he came to visit us before.
Always welcome here. Alex, please.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, you know, whenever we talk about things like this, I'm always reminded of the old, I think it's a Greek proverb, that a society grows great when old men plant trees they know they will never sit in the shade of. And that's something that I hope that we are doing through our action on climate change that runs through so much of what we're doing as an administration. And it's depressing to hear Simon give a dishonourable mention to the climate change cranks, or the climate change deniers of a certain political limited company, and people who I think are more worried about the inheritance tax that might be paid by the millionaire leaders of that company, one of which is currently arguing with a bin in Clacton, more worried about that inheritance than the inheritance that actually matters, which is the planet that we leave to our children and grandchildren. And I certainly don't want my grandchildren to be going out with an oxygen tank because of the damage that this generation failed to arrest. But you don't have to buy into any of that. You can be as stupid as those individuals are, and surely you still understand that there are benefits to doing things better, doing things more efficiently, doing things in a way that reduce our consumption. You only have to look at the incredible savings that we made by switching our streetlights to LED at a time when Kent County Council was switching its streetlights off. We were switching ours to an energy efficient model that means the lights stay on and they cost every taxpayer less than they did before. So that's the sort of example of forward-thinking policy that actually is cost-effective and delivers very real and quick benefits. But I was just saying that that is a golden thread that runs through everything that we do as an administration, whether it is the improvements to air quality and the reduction in car journeys through the Safer, Healthier Streets programme, to the EV charging that we're going to come on to a little bit later in this agenda, item 19, and also to the energy efficiencies that we achieved through the ICT infrastructure refresh, item 16. You know, it's really important to gather all our successes and the particular targets in this report, and we should recognise those aims and those achievements. But actually, it's incumbent on all of us to think about this wherever it crops up in any of our portfolios, because working together, you know, we are thinking globally and acting locally.
Thank you very much, Alex. And yeah, I spoke earlier on about local government reorganisation and saying actually all 14 councils agree with each other. Here's an issue where the two upper tier authorities are fundamentally in a different place. And I have no hesitation in saying we are in the right place. And absolutely, even if you were cynical about climate emergency, and for the avoidance of doubt, I'm not, but even if you were, if you look at the pages of the report here from, I think, page 385 onwards, every single one of those things, dozens and dozens and dozens of amazing things happening in our community, which are great, but they also happen to be helping us tackle the climate emergency. But even if it wasn't tackling the climate emergency, those things are great. People being able to use their broken equipment because of the brilliant award-winning repair cafes, whether it is getting additional green bus stop roofs, lovely bus stop roofs, whether it is replacing outdated vehicles with energy efficient vehicles, you know, with better solar paneling, better climate focused branding, whether it is enabling more than 30,000 free child journeys over the summer. And I'm confident this summer that number will be even higher because of the great communication, the great One Medway approach, and Simon, your personal leadership on this. I want to give a slide, I don't want to be film 26, but I'd encourage residents, if you do take an interest in this council, and I think it's the first council, certainly in Kent and probably the southeast of England, we are hosting a showing of the National Emergency Briefing. Come along, hear from me and Simon, and more importantly, hear from each other. Have that conversation, be part of that conversation. And I'm incredibly proud as a council we're hosting that. Other upper tier authorities take a different view, and they're wrong. Simon, over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much. I was going to mention the film myself, actually, so thanks for bringing it up because it's important to note. It's the first screening is next week, I think it is. That's down in the Rochester Eco Hub are doing that down at the Vines Church. I'll be going to that. It's going to be more screenings of it. I've seen it. It's a really good film. Mostly, as has been said, it generates a conversation. I mean, the film finishes, you then sit and talk. And that's amazing, the response that it gets. That's how good it is as a film. Lots of famous people show their faces on it as well, telling them what they think, which is good to see. I think that, and Zoe's right, Fergal Sharkey came to us a few years ago, and we had a great night. About 100+ people turned up to hear him talk. It was a brilliant night. Hopefully he'll come back. I heard him on the radio a couple of weeks ago, passionate as ever about these issues, particularly water quality in the River Medway, which is something he cares a lot about. So that's going to be great if we can secure that. I think, and just a couple of good examples of how this really matters. One is one of the outcomes of the community working group was that energy, I mentioned it, was something they really care about. So they set up another working group of a working group to look at energy efficiency and how we can look at net zero energy for people, but also, as important, energy for people who live in the most deprived conditions and how we can help them with the cost of that. As a consequence of that, and they're about to sort of launch this year probably, a community interest company is being set up, our first Medway Community Energy Company, to look at how we can help and deliver net zero projects for people in Medway. Along, like you've heard of Orchard Energy and other companies. This is another one, and they're setting up here in Medway. It's going really well. They're very passionate about it. Had a meeting today looking at anaerobic digesters, and they had to talk to our waste team about how much kitchen waste do we generate in Medway. It's about 40,000 tonnes of it. Well, that could go into an anaerobic digester, generate hydrogen gas, which burns cleanly, and there you go, you've got an energy source. So there's that sort of thing. That's what they're looking at. Very exciting. Another good example, trees I mentioned, I was going to mention that, was Cossington Park, and how people engage with their trees. The tree saplings that are growing there were seeds donated by people of Medway, and a lot of us around the room were donating seeds there. They are going to be ready for planting this coming planting season. So that's that circular economy thing. And just one other thing that I'm really, really happy about, and it came about a few years ago, thanks to the support of everybody around the room here, was climate implications on council reports. Little things like that actually matter hugely, because now every time we see a council report, we see that little paragraph at the end which says there is a climate implication for what we're deciding to do, and that's now embedded along with legal and financial implications. It's in our thinking throughout, and those little acts that we do and introduce actually matter a lot. So thank you for all your support on this. Thanks hugely to the team. I don't know how they do it with the hours that they work. It makes a massive difference, but really grateful. And clearly the officer support that goes behind that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Let's move on to item 10, which sits with me. I'm afraid most of the next half of the agenda sits with me, so strap in. Let's start with this. I'll move the recommendation as laid out in paragraph 1. Colleagues will recall from the first 100 days of our administration, I was incredibly proud to bring forward a cost of living plan, which was right and appropriate at the time. At the same time, my friend and colleague Tracy had to write repeatedly to the previous government to say, please can you extend the household support fund? We were left in dire straits at some point. So the fact that as part of the spending review, there's a new fund in place, the Crisis and Resilience Fund, replacing that. And really importantly, for the first time, it is a multi-year discretionary support available, delivered directly by local councils. And I think our track record in delivering the Household Support Fund gives me huge confidence in the plan that you see laid out in Appendix 1. It has some specific focuses which I think are important to highlight tonight: responding to crisis, housing support, building resilience, and I'll come back to that in a moment, and community coordination. We're already seeing some really good examples of that. Things like the community supermarket, which will be opening later in the year. Importantly, supporting things like our adult education to be able to build personal resilience, ensuring families and individuals can get help with things like literacy and numeracy, which makes them more resilient as individuals. I want to talk about the Macmillan service, which has previously been delivered by this council for around 15 years. And worth saying that at Macmillan's request a couple of years back, actually that team was expanded to cover not only Medway, but also West Kent as well. They've taken a decision centrally to change how they fund third-party funding for welfare support in the way that we were previously offering that. I think it's fair to say the transition has left that service weak, and we've been able to step in and support them. We know from conversations, particularly with the hospital, that actually our team, which has been retained as a direct result of us having the Crisis and Resilience Fund, has meant two things. We've been able to support those residents who we were previously supporting in many cases, but absolutely we've been able to expand that support for other life-limiting illnesses, to support those residents going through what can sometimes be a really complex process, particularly with the DWP and to a lesser degree HMRC. And I'm really pleased to say that no member of that team, the Macmillan team that were employed by Medway, have lost their job as a result of us securing this through the Crisis and Resilience Fund. I'm incredibly proud of that, and I want to place on record, in particular, my thanks to that team who do so much good work, often behind the scenes, often unsung, but I'm going to take a moment to absolutely recognise them, and they've managed that transition very well indeed. One of the other things that we have talked about here, and being open and honest about this, is around the fact that the scheme has meant some changes to particularly support during the school holidays. We've already seen the funding that's been, although we're agreeing the plan tonight, the scheme's been in place since April. So already we've seen 25% of that particular support going to households where free school meals are in place. So again, not only getting that direct support where families most need it, also all of those families would have been offered that resilience support as well, to check on their finances, to make sure they're getting all the support that they can. I want to place on record my thanks to Gemma Gilly, the outstanding manager of that team, and all members of that team who work across not only the council, and there are good examples, particularly working with teams like the housing team, to make sure that it's better for residents to make sure if we can find a solution where people are not evicted, but actually using this scheme to support them finding a way through, particularly if they've got a short-term financial challenge. That's better for everybody, better for the resident, but ultimately better for us as a council as well. We don't want to see people being made homeless as a result of schemes which we can support, and we have done already. So really proud of this work. I think we lead the way in local government actually on this. Other councils looked at our local plan on this previously with the cost of living plan, and I know they'll be looking at our new crisis and resilience plan as well. I'll pause there. I'll take some contributions. So I'll go to Teresa first, then Tracy.
Thank you, Vince, and my thanks to the team, another team who are out and about the whole time. I've encountered the crisis and resilience support team at practically every event that we've had, and in surprising places where they go without any fanfare because they know that there's a need in the community. And it's really good news. When we had our housing and social care teams together a couple of weeks ago, it was really good to see the colleagues who previously worked for Macmillan feeling completely embedded in the work of the council. I'm very pleased to be there, and like everybody else at that particular event, coming up with lots of ideas. And I think that the resilience element of this is really important. The government have put an emphasis on cash, and along with that comes that offer, a sincere and genuine offer of help to manage difficult circumstances going forward, and help people by all of the links that we've got with the family hubs, with schools, with our adult with our adult education teams, making the best of opportunities that will increase personal resilience. And that's important. So this is not saying to people, you're being given this because you can't manage things. It's saying you're being given this because we believe you can manage things, and things will be better in the future, and we're not going to leave any family behind. We're going to continue to offer support, continue to check in, do those things in a friendly, non-invasive way to make sure that the people who benefit from this fund, it's important to have it, actually can move forward with their lives and take advantage of all of the support and opportunities that are associated with this team. Thank you for mentioning the community supermarket events. I'm really looking forward to that. The lease has now been signed. Everything's in place. The refurbishment work for the location in the Pentagon is starting. It should be open in the late autumn. The staff are in place. The suppliers and association with organisations like Fair Share are up and running. And we're applying, in part because of the community supermarket, but because of lots of other initiatives as well within our food partnership, for a Silver Sustainable Food Places Award. So I wish us, everybody, very good luck with that. It's not luck that we need, it's the ability to actually, let other people know what we're doing. But everybody who's involved deserves recognition that we want sustainable, good food for everybody, whether that comes through the Crisis and Resilience Fund, whether it comes through the community supermarket, whether it comes from a referral through one of our family hubs. as I said before, we don't want to leave anybody behind. We want everybody to be included, and this plan embodies that one Medway approach to doing that.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. I'll take Tracy next.
Thank you very much. I remember very clearly how close we got to that cliff edge when we thought that the Household Support Fund wasn't going to continue. And I really welcome the greater certainty that this 3-year settlement has brought. It means that we can plan ahead, we can deliver effective preventative crisis support to Medway residents who are most in need, with a view to helping people to build that financial resilience so that they are not permanently reliant on coming for help. So Medway residents can still rest assured that they'll be supported in times of crisis. Now, I'm really pleased that Medway Adult Education is going to be able to continue to offer courses in basic maths, literacy, English as a second language, meaning that adults can improve their skills and become more employable. And this will help build financial resilience and help them avoid crises in the future. It means that they'll be more able to find jobs, to access healthcare, to support their children with their own learning. So it really is going to be something that builds up in the future. Regarding the help with free school meals, it is a different approach, but we are still able to offer help to those residents who are most in need, and that's really important. And it's not just a blanket payment. This now involves follow-up telephone conversations and support so that those families are no longer reliant on this additional financial support in the future, and they build that resilience. And really importantly, we're still offering help towards the purchase of school uniforms. Families who are at financial crisis still have children who want to turn up to that first day at school in September, looking smart, looking well turned out, and we are helping to make sure that this happens, and I'm really pleased that we're able to do that.
Thank you very much. Luella.
Yeah, Tracy and Teresa have said it really. It is about helping people, engaging with people when they need it, because everyone can face crisis at any time. Particularly, I'm focused obviously on the housing element of it. We have, I mentioned earlier in the reports, we have the tenancy sustainment team that are helping people to manage their finances better. They're out in the road shows, as Teresa said earlier, they love Gillingham, and our housing options service. But Vince, you were out with the Rough Sleeper Initiative team, and actually that's a real example of people being engaged when they are in crisis in order to try and help them into housing, help them have support of the other areas where they might need it for health and well-being. And it is really what it says, crisis and resilience, to sort of engage in an emergency and then help you to sustain a healthy future. So yeah, I fully support you.
Thank you very much, Luella. I can't see any other member, so let me just a few reflections before we move to the vote on that. Yeah, thank you, Tracy. And again, I think recognising in particular that adult education approach, you know, this more than perhaps a household support fund, building that individual personal resilience is a way to build confidence in individuals, to give them the support so that they don't need to access these sorts of schemes moving forward. But they'll be there for when people do, and I think that's important to highlight and recognise. The community supermarket is going to be a real added value. Again, another reason to come to the Pentagon, you know, very close to the James Williams Healthy Living Centre. So absolutely recognise that, and we'll talk more about that. And I know we'll be inviting our friends from the media to go and see that before it's formally open. So look forward to taking them there as well. Luella, there's not much I get up for at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm not really a morning person, but my goodness, going out with the team, Ben and Courtney in particular, but actually seeing other members of the team as well, was inspiring to see that work happening firsthand, to see really compassionate council officers doing work which at times is robust, but absolutely showing again why schemes like the Crisis and Resilience Fund are so important, and having a housing element to that is vital. So again, a huge thanks to those individuals for spending time with me. I was grateful for that, and I'd encourage any cabinet member, if you like an early start, it's definitely worth your time to go and see that particular piece of work happening. Thank you for all the kind comments as well. And again, I know that the team who deliver this every single day, they value the support of this cabinet, and they know that we appreciate the difference it makes to our families and individuals at their most difficult time. As Tracy rightfully says, this is about being there when families and individuals are in crisis. And we will always be there till the final day of this council, and hopefully beyond, with this particular scheme. And I think it ultimately, although Household Support Fund did a good job, I think the flexibility and the long-term guarantee of this means that we can make more and stronger interventions to improve the lives of families and individuals even more so. So on that basis, I'll move the recommendations laid out. Is that agreed? Thank you. Let's move on to the next agenda item, which is with me. And this is looking at the capital budget. I'll move the recommendation as laid out in the report. Compared to the next item, this is relatively straightforward. I urge colleagues to have a look at paragraph 10 in particular, where you can see the alterations and changes that are being made here. This particular set of improvements, some of which we've seen happen very recently. I want to recognise actually the very first one on the list there. I was pleased to be with the MP for Chatham and Aylesford and my friend and ward colleague, Councillor Nina Gurung, for the opening of the Maidstone Road play zone. That follows the opening of the Strand play zone, and because we don't want to leave the third MP out, the soon-to-be opened play zone on the peninsula as well. Really exciting schemes happening. And again, worth recognising, this is excellent use of Section 106 developer contributions alongside working with partners like the Football Foundation and others. So really, really incredibly proud of that. Of course, we've made reference already tonight to the £45 million worth of HRA stock acquisition. That's what's been agreed. So that's within here as well. And the minor amendment of a scheme coming off is to help fund the street ambassadors in Chatham, which I know has been a very, very well received scheme. I've received a report on the positive interventions that Section 106 contribution was able to be made there. So again, of course, making sure that all pennies that are being spent through Section 106 are being used in an appropriate way. So I'll move the recommendations as laid out. Are there any contributions people want to make? Simon, thank you.
Yeah, there's a million things in here, obviously, but just one thing I wanted to pick out, which I just sort of highlight for colleagues, and I've been going up there quite regularly. I was up there again last week, was the work being done at the community parkland at Deangate. It's quite brilliant what's happened up there. Again, thanks to 106 funding, hard work and dedication by the officers, new volunteer group there, local ward councillors and the parish council all involved in that. The phase one works are just about complete now. We've got a little launch event coming up in a couple of weeks' time to celebrate that achievement, and then moving into the phase two works up there as well. So it's all going really smoothly and a great project, and shows how much we can commit to communities across Medway and develop new sites for biodiversity. It's looking fantastic up there with the wildlife looking in pretty good condition despite the drought conditions. So I just wanted to highlight the work being done at Deangate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Luella? No, sorry, Teresa?
Yes, like Simon, looking into the weeds of this report, there are lots of small improvements that will make a huge difference, to other play areas, to town hall gardens, always mindful of the way that we can make the local environment more pleasant and more fun for people to do, as well as some big things going on, like Care for Medway. I'm really pleased to see that progressing, more design work to happen, a very meaningful and productive meeting about what we want to call that project and what the ethos and values of that project will be, which are as important as the physical buildings themselves, and wanting particularly to draw attention to the way that developer contributions are being used as part of these capital schemes, carefully and with a lot of attention to the impact that new housing is already making. And I'd commend to people the work for the Esplanade and Jackson's Fields, a large amount of money from developer contributions over a long period of time, because the money is coming in different ways, but being able to work with community groups, work with residents to think about what's happening, a very live and extensive public engagement about Jackson's Fields for improvements to the skate park and other improvements to the park, particularly there, on the interpretation of the wonderful view that you get from Jackson's Fields right across the River Medway. There will be more interpretation in the park to explain to people what they're looking at and get them in touch with the history of that, including not just what they can see, but what is under the ground, under their feet, because there are a lot of historical architectural remains there that mustn't be touched and are very valuable in terms of interpreting and telling the story of the whole history of Medway fortification. So, you know, this is about big things and little things as well that all make a difference to people's lives and you know, continue to improve the appearance of our towns, as well as giving jobs and lots of opportunities to bring in experts to help us achieve all of these things.
Thank you very much indeed. And as I think I've said publicly before, my favourite view of the whole of Medway is from the top of Victoria Gardens, just the next door neighbour of Jackson. So I agree with that. And anything more we can put on things like interpretation through Section 106 contributions, there's a big old few sites being built out there, one being demolished as well, thankfully, thank goodness. So that's very positive to see. Just as a practicality, just to let Cabinet colleagues know, we'd normally be taking the capital strategy in September. We're going to be moving that to sit alongside other budget items in February. So as we're talking about capital, I thought I'd just let colleagues know that as well. So that will sit alongside capital strategy and programme together in February. But no, thank you very much for the comments. Colleagues, happy to agree the recommendation?
Agreed.
Thank you. Let's move to the supplementary agenda. One, which is obviously on the item 12, revenue budget monitoring. I'll move the recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1.1 and 1.2. We're likely to have a 1.3, but we'll get to that at the end of the item. Look, it's worth saying right at the start here, since day one of this administration, we've been explicitly clear that we knew that we were dealing with a difficult set of financial circumstances. We knew that before we won the election. And we know that because, as I said to a response to a question earlier on, councils across the country had been starved of resources for a decade and a half. So one relatively positive multi-year settlement, of course, is to be welcomed, but that by itself won't fix 15 years of not having the taps where they need to be. And I think if you look across the country, certainly councils who have needed to access exceptional financial support over the years, I would say a large proportion of those are similar to ourselves in the sense of being those late 90s unitary authorities who have got all the pressures that both sets of councils, both upper tier and district and borough councils have got, but perhaps not the tax base which many others have as well. So we're not unique in that. So I give that as a bit of context as to the journey that we've been on. Clearly the figure that we have in paragraph 5.1 is not where any of us would want to be today. That is a challenging figure, one which is the large majority of that figure is made up of 3 statutory services: adults, children's and temporary accommodation. And the largest of those, as is well documented, is adult social care. Now, again, we are not unique in that. If you look across other areas of the country, you will see that many councils, that particularly upper tier of authorities, obviously, that is an area where they continue to find financial challenge. Worth saying, and I'm sure my friend and deputy leader will speak a little bit more about this later on, as we've seen through various external bodies looking at our finances, actually the adult social care offer that Medway has financially is in some cases below the national average. We're spending in some cases below the national average on certainly working age adults. The challenge becomes where, like so many places, by the very nature of something like adult social care, all you need is some very high cost placements. And I think if you look at the top 15 individuals, and these are individuals, the collective cost of 15 individuals to the taxpayers of Medway is over £5 million a year. And of course, if you stopped anybody in the high street and said, someone with extremely complex physical needs, should we support them? The vast, vast, vast majority of people will say yes. But of course, we have to deal with the financial consequences of that. Again, we're not unique in that. That's not just a Medway issue. But I think if you're looking at our finances, that's where certainly some of the conversation has started from. We then turn to the work that's going on, and I think this is really important to recognise as well. There has been a lot of work happening over the last few weeks in particular. I want to pay particular tribute to Jackie Brown. And again, I know, Teresa, you will undoubtedly have more to say on this, but not alone. There are others across the council trying to bring down the approach that we are currently in. So look, this is absolutely a work in progress. We absolutely, as a cabinet, recognise there is more work that needs to be done. But on the issue of adult social care, I think we are at the point where we need to speak directly to government to say, look at the stats and circumstances we find ourselves in. How can it be that we're below the England average, but we still have that level of overspend? That is because of the quantum and often the complexity of the cases we have. That is not the fault of the individuals. Let me be really clear. This is not about the individuals who are receiving that care. That is about making sure we have a system which is fit for purpose in 2026. And we know nationally, of course, we've seen in the first 2 weeks of the new Prime Minister, a big conversation on adult social care is coming down the line as well. So I think in one sense, this is the optimum time for us to be saying to government, you need to be specifically looking at this. And I think that conversation would be very much welcome. So I'll pause at that point. Colleagues may have more to say, I'm sure. I'll go first to Teresa. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. And the report is explicit and honest about both the gravity of the situation and indeed the things that we're doing about it. And I'm going to put some context around this. But what I want to say at the outset to everybody here tonight and everyone who's watching, this is driven by the needs of the people you've just mentioned. And we have not just statutory responsibility to look after older adults who need our care, and many people of working age who need it too. It's driven not just by statutory responsibility, it's driven by a moral responsibility, that these are the people, the most vulnerable in our community, who deserve our care. And whether someone walking along the high street is able to identify with that or not, it will be the case that one day someone in their family or one of their friends will have an engagement with adult social care, because it's the service that reaches out to the greatest number of people. And there, but for the grace go all of us, Vincent and Cabinet, in terms of whether we will need this service. We are looking after people who have got older and need more care. We're looking after younger people who have had accidents and life-changing diseases in their life. We're looking after people who have lifelong disabilities. and need us to make sure that they can live the best life that they can, and along with everyone else, be as independent as possible. But the context that I'm going to describe now is the fact that Medway is not a high spending authority, far from it actually. Independent analysis undertaken by the local government associations, adult social care, use of resources, demonstrates we spend less on adult social care than comparative authorities, in spite of the significant demand that we have experienced and continue to experience. In 2024-25, our expenditure was £585 per adult, compared to £633 nationally, £652 across national authorities, and £617 amongst SIPFA's nearest neighbours. We were ranked 105th out of 153 authorities for adult social care spending. So I hope that that shows, these are factual statistics, that shows that nobody is being profligate. On the contrary, we are being prudent with our spending. So this challenge is not so much about disproportionate spending, it's about a mismatch between funding and levels of demand. And yes, in Medway, since 2019, there's been a 70% growth in adult social care budgets. But everywhere else, that growth has been between 85% and 96%. And the funding we receive for health is low as well. Last year, we received £82 of NHS income per adult we're looking after, compared with a national average of £95, making us 91st among English single-tier and county councils. Now, I know that some people say they don't like statistics, but they're important. They are governing the way that we're trying to drive making the most of the funding that we've got. Our expenditure for adults under 65 years increased by 17%, and on adults over 65 years by 18%, year on year on year. An analysis of the care market, the people that we work with, who provide care for us and to whom I'm convinced that the reductions, the promises of savings that are made as part of this plan are real. We will see them in year. Everyone is working very, very hard, but I'm afraid that will not change the position of Medway being underfunded for adult social care, and it certainly won't change my commitment, and I hope the commitment of Cabinet, to making sure that we get the funding that we need and deserve, and that we continue to work in the interests of the people we are looking after, as opposed to the interests of anybody who is worried about whether or not we've got an overspend. We know about it, we are honest and frank about it, we are managing about it, we're managing it and we'll continue to do that. But our sights must be very firmly turned on the people that we're looking after, to make sure that we do the very best that we can to them, and demonstrate that, of course, to regulators like the CQC and others, but mainly to the families and loved ones of the people who actually need our care.
Thank you, Teresa. I'll take Luella next, then Simon, please. Thank you, Luella.
Thank you. So I'll just talk briefly about the temporary accommodation. So as we know, the demand is rising constantly for temporary accommodation, and that's because of situations where we need the Crisis Resilience Fund. There are situations where it's just unavoidable. Since October 2023, it's just increased, not just in the number of people needing temporary accommodation, number of families living in temporary accommodation, but the cost of the nightly paid temporary accommodation. In fact, the cost has increased 30% in the last 18 months. So it is just growing and growing. So as an authority, we've taken various steps, and I've spoken about them before, but I'll just repeat them again, to address the rising costs so we can minimise them as much as we can for the Medway taxpayer. So that comes from owning our own temporary accommodation. We knew we had the big package of investment to be able to purchase them, with the aim of 150 properties, but that has grown. Now we've managed to, through various grant and other ways, achieve almost 200 properties. So we're doing everything we can there. We've increased the social housing building that we're doing with the number I mentioned earlier. For the HRA, the rate of growth in those properties has increased. We've got our own One Medway lettings service, which I've mentioned before, and I'll plug it again if any landlord is interested in utilising that service. That itself helps go towards us addressing this cost of temporary accommodation. The work with adult social care that Teresa's just mentioned, that's a collaborative approach across the two services to be able to reduce overall costs, and that is working by having conversations and using the professional experience and skills of the teams they're achieving. We're also, through our rehousing service and sustainment, actually having conversations with people much earlier in the process. If they feel that they're about to be evicted or about to be made homeless, they are approaching the service, and those early interventions are really having a positive impact of avoiding homelessness in the first place. So there's a list there of things that we're doing. I just want to sort of highlight, it's not the fault of the person who's going into temporary accommodation. The council is responsible in addressing it, but people find themselves in these situations, as we said just earlier about the people in crisis, and it does happen, but it's about how we address it, and we're doing everything we can to bring those costs down. These measures do help towards reducing those costs, and where we can, we're acting early to prevent it in the homelessness occurring in the first place.
Thank you very much, Luella. I'll take Simon next.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks to Teresa, particularly for the way you're tackling this massive problem, and to the whole team in so many issues around it. I think one of the things that it's important to highlight, I mean, it's like being caught between a rock and a hard place. We have this huge problem right now, which is going to cost us a lot of money, and we're hoping that we get support, and we get help, and we will manage our way through it as best we can. And that's being addressed, but it's also the reasons and causes for it. Why is it that adult social care costs have just escalated the way they have? And I'm no expert in that field, but I'm sure that most of us could sit down. If we had a sort of a whiteboard, we could probably all write the causes down as some sort of word diagram or word picture as to what the factors were: cost of living crisis, accommodation and housing, air pollution, diet and fitness, all the issues that bundle up to make adults needing social care support of some sort are all there in front of us. And we can hope that we get support from the government. We can hope that we can manage to find our finances internally and reduce costs here, there and everywhere to cover this increasing cost. But at the end of the day, we also need to think of the future and how we don't do that anymore, because whatever we've been doing in the past has led to the problems that we've got now, and that's got to change, and we're changing. We've got our marketplace principle in place. We've got action plans around green spaces. We're tackling things like air pollution. We've got stuff around employment and skills that we're trying to do. All those factors which come together, which will mean that the young people growing up in Medway today will not have these needs that we're having to deal with at the moment, because we're taking action right now to resolve them. So it's not about just sitting and hoping that we can find a solution for the here and now. It's about thinking of the future that we've got ahead of us and as a community. And I think we're doing what we can in so many areas. And I go back to I've mentioned before, the One Council Medway plan and the Marmot principles that we've now got in place. That's what our future is wrapped up in, those sort of policies and principles that we want to address. And we're doing it at a pace that we can afford to do, but we're still caught between that rock and a hard place with the budget right now is facing us. So I think there is hope for the future in everything we're trying to do, but we've also got to tackle the problems of the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam, please.
Thank you, Vince. And in my portfolio, Children's Services, we know that soon after we came into administration, we managed to achieve good in terms of the quality of our children's social care. And that came at a time when in like previous years, sadly, the previous administration had been taking money out of children's services and therefore putting that progress at risk. Yes, there was a concerted effort in the last 2 to 3 years of the previous administration, And through their stewardship then, and through our stewardship coming into administration, we managed to get good. And we also got the epithet from like Ofsted that children matter in Medway, and we've been working hard to build on that ever since then. The fact is that like, because we are a relatively small unitary authority, we are like surrounded by the other upper tier authority, which is Kent County Council, and that therefore means that there have been various ways that we've been seeking to like address that gap from our workforce point of view, making sure that we've got the one Medway plan, making sure that we've got the that we're paying our staff not over the odds, but enough to be able to get more temporary going to permanent staff coming to us in Medway, and there's been great strides that have been taking place in that. Our services for children's social care is geared towards early care, which is towards like preventing situations getting escalating out of all like proportion. Like a stitch in time saves time, and it's not just to achieve savings in money, but it's to improve the quality of the care of our young people, because young people only get that one chance when they're growing up. I'm really pleased and proud that as chair of the corporate parenting meeting, that we've been giving our most vulnerable children, looked after children, a voice, and to work with us towards like creating a better Medway for them and their families, and that our efforts have been recognised by central government with the Department for Education, because they've allocated one of the seven. We are one of 7 authorities which have been identified to be able to take the kinship care pilot, and the like significance of like being able to have that flexibility as far as helping people with kinship care is that then it equips families who are facing dodgy situations or very fragile situations with the children within their extended family to be able to build their like resilience, and that echoes what we were saying earlier on about the like resilience fund as well, towards keeping children in their neighbourhoods, in their extended family, perhaps an uncle or an aunt or a grandparent, like etc., who knows that child, and thereby like preventing that child from going into care. And that will obviously only happen over a period of time, but we have in Medway, it's been shown and it's come to the attention for the Department for Education that we are an authority which has earned that right to be able to work on this pilot. The only non-statutory service that we continue to provide within Medway is the youth service, but the youth service is working really well with our young people, and again we've been singled out to be like potentially the recipient of like additional funding, which will actually enable us to go forward for a youth hub, and that will bring more money into the authority. That is actually coupled with the strength of our management team, who are all in place now, and I'd like to pay that tribute to Kelly Cogger and obviously Celia Buxton and the other members of the senior team, because they have been bringing in the savings through like reducing the like cost of placements, and again making sure that children can be looked after locally, rather than having to go miles away to like other parts of the country. So we're working very hard like on that, and I do I empathise a lot with the Deputy Leader, like Theresa Murray, for the work on adult social care, because we've been turning towards adult social care, and it's absolutely right that we are investing in a care home so that we can start to have our own like provision there, which provides better care for our older people, and also starts to bring back that gap from those council care homes that were closed under the previous administration, Shawswood, all the other ones. So that's my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. I can't see any other colleagues, so thanks for those contributions. And look, I think it's worth saying 3 or 4 things before we move to the vote on this item. Look, be under no illusion that the next 9 months of balancing this budget is going to be difficult and challenging. there's no doubt of that. All of the contributions we've heard tonight show two things for me, really. Firstly, we are absolutely not complacent as an administration. We know this is a challenging set of circumstances. We know we're not alone in this. We're not the only unitary authority in this set of circumstances. But we continue to work hard. We continue to look at new and innovative ways of trying to make good progress on this. We've made mention already tonight of Jackie Brown, and Jackie's looking at some very specific programs which should hopefully lead to substantial savings as we move forward. I want to thank Phil Watts as our Chief Operating Officer, along with Abby Goff, our new Chief Finance Officer. I think having Abby in post has been really helpful, and she's certainly been a number of finance meetings we've had, both looking at this year's budget and next year's budget. And that's one of the other things I want to say is we at the moment as an administration, we're already starting earlier than we've ever done before, again for the second year, looking at next year's budget. But of course, we are wrestling with the challenges that this year's budget presents to us. And we're doing that in a way which I think is continuing, as always, with the One Medway ethos, because that's how we work, but also making sure that we're giving that time for collaboration, as Luella referenced, the fact of getting some people to sit down together and find some solutions which actually help, in that case, both housing and adult social care. I mentioned at the start of the item we would probably move a third recommendation, so I will be adding that, and that will be that the Deputy Leader of the Council, along with the Chief Operating Officer and the Deputy Chief Executive, will write to relevant Secretaries of State and Ministers of Government from both the Department for Health and Social Care, MHCLG and the Treasury, to say we would like a specific conversation about these circumstances for where we find ourselves with the issue of adult social care. And I'm genuinely hopeful that will lead to a conversation which will lead to positive outcomes. Who knows exactly what that will look like, but until we send that letter, there's no dialogue. And that, of course, sits alongside, and it's worth saying this as well, the ongoing conversations that particular members of the corporate management team have on a very regular basis with those government departments and others. So this isn't a new conversation, but I think particularly with the new government in place, this is the appropriate opportunity to highlight that, as Teresa laid out so very clearly, with an organisation which is below the national average spend, frankly dealing with the pressures of the market, but also the increasing level of requirement, that leaves us in a situation where a conversation with government at this point is now required. So I'll be making that as a third recommendation. I'll work with Vanessa on the formal wording of that when we come to agreeing the minutes, but I hope colleagues can understand the spirit of what we're agreeing there. On that basis, are colleagues happy to agree the three recommendations? Is that agreed? Thank you. Let's then move back to the main agenda document, and we're going to page 443 for the One Medway Financial Improvement and Transformation Plan, FIT Plan, Q1 update. And again, I think if you want an example of this being a work in progress, this is absolutely it. I'll move the recommendation as laid out in paragraph 1. You can see from paragraph 4.2 where we've got to so far with FIT plan savings, just to show that this is, you know, absolutely an administration who takes financial sustainability, financial improvement and transformation seriously. The FIT plan, as 4.2 paragraph lays out, over £70 million worth of either savings or additional income coming into the council. Colleagues may wish to refer to their particular parts of the council, but really I think we've talked a lot in the last item about where we find ourselves financially. I guess what I would say is if this work of this item hadn't happened, we would be in a far worse position. And that's not just of this Q1, that's of the previous 2 years as well. And again, I'm really proud that we are very open and transparent. There are other councils that wouldn't show the dashboards that we're showing in this particular report. I'm proud that we have always taken that approach to be open and transparent. So I'll move that as recommendation in paragraph 1. Any colleagues, any contributions on that? Alex, please.
Yeah, Vince, just to pick up on comments made earlier around the climate action plan, and just to draw people's attention on page 450 to a saving of £250,000 from the street lighting energy budget, and also £100,000 saving from the Medway tunnel energy budget. So just real life examples of why doing the right thing is also the efficient and the prudent thing to do.
Thank you very much. Any other colleague? No. Again, Alex, I think a really good example, again, showing very clearly there, you know, as practical examples of that one Medway approach, saying actually the FIT plan is also helping the climate plan. That's what a joined up council looks like. Okay, colleagues, are you happy to agree the recommendation as laid out? Thank you. Let's then move on to item 14, Treasury Management Outturn Annual Report. Bear with me one moment. Recommendations are as laid out in paragraph 1, and in particular to note the Audit Committee comments in section 8. Obviously, with this particular year's Treasury Management, I think we recognise some of the challenges from an international perspective. Wars, which we haven't participated in. I'm very pleased to say the previous Prime Minister took the right decision on that. But of course, that's not the only conflict happening. Those have an impact on various Treasury management influences, be that inflation, be that interest rates, all of which have an impact here. And you can see some of the narrative, a really good narrative actually, and again, easy to read, even if you're not an absolute expert in some of these things. So if you look at paragraph 8 in particular, you can see the level of detail that the colleagues on Audit Committee looked at in this. This is, of course, where, and again, if this is an interesting area for you, I'd always encourage those conversations. You can see there the variety of things they've looked at, everything from Lobos, which, of course, for the avoidance of doubt, is a product that wasn't started under this administration, and the MP for Chatham and Aylesford continues to take an interest in this, to, of course, our relationship with MDC, and importantly, not least in light of the previous couple of reports, the cost of finance as well, and debt repayment. And I suspect particularly over the next 20 odd months, as we move towards local government reorganisation, some of those questions may not only just come up in Treasury management, but also in some of those other wider conversations. So I move the report as laid out. Happy to take any questions or comments from colleagues. If not, is that agreed? Thank you. Let's then move on to a report which is not being moved by me, you'll be pleased to know. Medway 2.0 update. Over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Vince. This is a programme which in my portfolio I inherited when it was very much at an embryonic stage, and now we have moved at pace since that sort of first discussions of this to 2 years on, now scaling it up and really starting to deliver those tangible results. I won't go into the report, which I take as read, but just to bring out a few highlights from that report. Those tangible results are now actually manifesting themselves in the best part of £500,000 of savings identified in this report, and various different sums dotted through it. In budget terms, we continue to record those savings within the departments which they are made, though. So that's what we've always been really clear about, that departments embracing Medway 2.0 as a mechanism for delivering efficiencies should be something that also allows them to take credit for those savings as and when they are made, and that's been the rationale that we've adopted, and I think that's been the common sense of that has been borne out by the sums that different departments have been able to deliver, and it all underpins that financial improvement and transformation plan which we just talked about, which is targeting £3.9 million of additional income and £12.5 million of savings in this financial year. And that is made possible by so many of the systems which have been redesigned as part of Medway 2.0. And those savings, you know, whether the telephone calls that don't need to be made or answered, whether it's scanning and printing documents that doesn't have to happen, or the time that doesn't have to be spent scribing notes by social workers, those savings are not theoretical, they are real and they are happening now. With this Medway 2.0 programme, we saw the need, we understood the potential, we grasped the opportunity, and the people of Medway are now reaping those benefits. We've got more straightforward reporting processes for things that people might want to interact with the council on. We've got an AI powered search tool on our homepage, which is helping give better answers more quickly to those common queries. More efficient invoice processing for those who do business with the council. And we're now at the stage where really the key services for many people that the council deliver, highways, housing, council tax, customer inquiries, have all now been redesigned and digitalised. Now, that's not something that's good in itself. It's not, but I'd want to underline that Medway 2.0 is not a cosmetic exercise. This isn't about having a whizzy new interface. It's actually the opposite of that. In fact, what I want the people of Medway to notice about all of this is pretty much nothing at all. But I want them to understand from this report that what's happening under the bonnet is happening much more efficiently now, that processes are joined up that were always disjointed previously, that were requiring so many ridiculous workarounds that don't have to happen anymore. You know, we've got AI tools operating round the clock to monitor roads, to identify those most in need of the scarce budget we have for repair, to make sure that those most in need are prioritised. On the fly, it's translating questions from the public and answers from the council into 70 languages at no additional cost to taxpayers. It's speeding up processes and decisions in the statutory services that we've just heard about, the things the council spends millions of pounds on every day that are unavoidable and are relied on by some of the most vulnerable members of our community. Those decisions are being made more quickly because of the transformation that underpins Medway 2.0. And finally, I would just want to highlight the progress made on the Integrated Hubs project and the timelines set out in the report, which we'll revisit here in future meetings in more detail. But again, just to point out, it's as much about service redesign, more about service redesign as it is about putting those services under one roof. That might be the obvious change to members of the public, but actually, as I say, it's the stuff that's happening under the bonnet that is far more critical, and I think this report is a vindication of our approach, and I invite comment from any other member.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Very helpful overview. Any questions, comments? No. I think, I think that speaks for itself in the sense of certainly this is impacting positively across every one of our portfolios. I think that's positive. I particularly welcome paragraph 5, actually, the relationship between Medway 2.0 and local government reorganisation. I think that's important. And again, using the tools and techniques to make sure that we move far beyond safe and legal. I think that's critically important. And saying that loud and clear here, I think is to be very welcome indeed. So huge thanks to you and the team who I know are working hard on this, and certainly at LGA conference, which myself, Luella, Teresa and Nina were at. I certainly spoke to a couple of people we have close relationships. Jadu, very pleased to see us, and they enjoy working with the team here. Similarly with the brand that I can't remember the name of, who we all know as Magic Notes, but that's not their name anymore. Thank you. Yeah, they too spoke highly of Medway. So it's good to see that some of those leading operators enjoy working with us. That's not always been the case necessarily, but it certainly is now. Back to you, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely, Vince. I mean, those examples that you bring out are just a fraction of what has gone on inside Gun Wharf and now happening outside of Gun Wharf itself. But just to pay tribute to Paul Boyd and his team, who have delivered so many of these processes, service redesigns, consultations with staff, actually doing the nitty gritty of this stuff in Medway, not waiting for some distant corporation, although we have fantastic large IT partners on this as well, but actually making sure that the fix is delivered in-house, which means that it is bespoke for Medway, and as you say, is future-proofed with regard to LGR as well, because those decisions and changes and fixes will in the future be delivered in North Kent or whatever it might be called. But yeah, I'm really pleased with this report, and look forward to further progress this time next year.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Is that agreed? Thank you. Let's then move to agenda item 16, ICT Infrastructure Refresh Programme Capital Investment. Alex, back to you.
So some similar topic, related topic, but I suppose in layman's terms, this is that moment where your phone starts to get a little bit slow and your laptop starts to turn its fan on slightly more regularly and be slightly less efficient. And for a household, that can be a decision that can be resolved by a visit to websites like Backmarket. Other reseller sites are available, and you can perhaps prolong the life by buying a second-hand bit of IT equipment, which might tide you over for another few years at a cut price cost. When it comes to council infrastructure, local government infrastructure, we can't just nip down to cash converters and pick up a second-hand version that's a bit newer than the one we've got. We have to have a proper programme of delivery. And this ICT infrastructure refresh programme is what looks like a large amount of money. And in the report, we're recommending option 2, which is a phased refresh of the equipment. So that's replacing end-of-life infrastructure over a 5-year programme, prioritising critical systems, and at the earliest opportunity, once again, aligning with our new LGR partners to smooth the transition to the new unitary authority, because as a unitary authority already, we understand all of the processes that local government has to undertake. We have looked at them all again through the previous item, Medway 2.0. So we know what we're talking about here. We know what the requirement is. So we also are asking to recommend to full council an addition of £3,869,000 to the capital programme to be funded by prudential borrowing. That capital borrowing is because of local government reorganisation only to support the programme from 2026 to 2028, when Medway Council will cease to exist. And for that finance, ICT will identify savings to support the cost of the additional borrowing for this financial year, and for next financial year they'll be reviewing budgets accordingly to do the same and cover those interest payments. In reference to the conversation again that we had for the climate action plan, I would ask you to look at the sustainability implications at 11.2 and judge them against those commitments that we talked about in that debate. Replacing power-hungry hardware with energy-efficient alternatives, in turn reducing the power and cooling demands on data centres. Consolidating hardware by reducing duplication of systems and infrastructure. So, in short, buying less kit that does more than one job, because there is a constant improvement in the capacity of these ICT systems to do more with less. So we need to harness that with this programme. It's further enabling and improving our capacity to offer remote and hybrid working, which reduces the need for travel, which in turn reduces emissions. And our new procurement specification will put sustainability at the heart of all of those procurement decisions. So that will be a key part of the scoring in terms of how they deliver on those challenges. Look, you know, you can argue over the methodology of how you pay for all this, but I believe option 2 is the sensible way to do this in a phased way. But the need to stay ahead of cybersecurity threats lends an urgency to any ICT refresh that I think, you know, again, cannot be overstated. Failure to do that, it just doesn't bear thinking about. You look at the consequences for a major public limited company like Marks and Spencer's, which was unable to trade online for months because of a cybersecurity attack. And if at all possible, I bet they wish they had been able to invest earlier to prevent that attack rather than bear the much greater cost afterwards. And in the same way, you know, failure to act now would, you know, potentially the consequences of a cyber attack succeeding because of technology that was too long in the tooth would absolutely dwarf the cost of the relatively modest capital investment that we're making here. So I don't like to tell Cabinet they have no choice, but in this circumstance, I really think there is no sensible alternative but to proceed with this at pace and absolutely get cracking on delivering on those processes.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Any comments from any colleagues? Certainly, any improvements in Wi-Fi, if nothing else, it will help my peace of mind. And I think genuinely, I think the frustration sometimes, which is nobody's fault, but I think anything we can do improving on that will just lead to more productive workplaces, which has got to be a good thing. So again, from that perspective, as well as the practical stuff. And your reference to a cyber attack, there's certainly a couple of councils, one in London in particular, who now still are dealing with the consequences of such a significant impact on that, and the real terms cost of that probably, as you say, dwarfs the figure we're talking about. This is not a small amount of money, for the avoidance of doubt, but dealing with that from a reputational perspective, from a GDPR perspective, all of those things which, yeah, doesn't even worth bear thinking about. So, no, absolutely hear that and recognise that. And I think what's helpful is it's quite a big sum in one sense, but actually having that breakdown in paragraph 14.1, I think for those who perhaps would want to go, well, what are you actually getting for your money? I think there's some helpful answers there. So that is very good indeed. I can't see any other colleagues, so I'll come back to you, Alex, for any final comments.
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, it's not really the place for delving into the nitty-gritty of the procurement process itself, but I can confirm, Leader, that one of the questions that I asked was, will the Wi-Fi then be better at Gun Wharf? I was assured that that would certainly be part of the procurement process for that equipment. And you only have to look at how much better your Wi-Fi router is now than the one that whatever your supplier gave you 10 years ago was. The technology moves on apace, and at home we try and muddle through. We install all the updates until finally there are no updates left for the aged technology that we're trying to keep on life support. And I think it's just important to remember that the council is not a household. We can't take the sort of risks that we might decide to take on a personal level. We're dealing with really important and sensitive data, important information on the nearly 300,000 people who live and work in Medway, and so it's really important that we do this in the best and most efficient way possible. So I'm confident that the recommendations set out do that.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, happy to recommend that to full council. Is that agreed? Thank you. We're now moving on to quick 3 gateway items. Teresa, over to you first for item 17.
Thank you, Vince. This is the start of procuring supported living services for adults over the age of 18, who I mentioned earlier, a large and important group that we look after. And as Cabinet colleagues around the table can see, this contract is worth over £300 million, but it's over 7 years. And that's important because what we're procuring here are places where people live, their homes. Option 4 is the preferred option, giving a competitive process in line with procurement legislation and rules. But you'll see that built into the contract is the ability every 1 to 2 years to let other people into the market, because supported living market does change and subcontract and move very, very quickly. And we have to make sure that we've got enough providers to look after the number of people that we're wanting to look after, and that new providers who come on are let in if other providers come out of the market. So that's the idea of that movement. And please remember, supported living plays a critical role in enabling timely hospital discharge, preventing unnecessary admissions. We work with children's services for people transitioning at the age of 18, for those with lifelong needs, to adult services. And also, sometimes when people have been into residential care for various reasons, injury or illness, as I was describing either, they need somewhere to step back into if they can't go home to the original circumstances that they lived in before what happened actually occurred. So this is a very important contract. I do thank the procurement team for making sure that we're compliant with the law, putting this together, and I look forward to seeing providers coming forward who would like to take part in supplying supported living. And I would say this is alongside the work that Luella mentioned earlier, and that I mentioned as well, working together with our housing team, because there is a need to think about and start the process of supplying our own supported living, as well as working with all of the providers. And the work that we're doing with housing has shown that the level of investment in temporary accommodation has freed up places where people in supported living can move to if they're ready to do so at a different stage in their life, as they garner increasing independence with the support that we give them. So all of those things influence this procurement contract, but we absolutely must have places for people we are looking after now and places for people that we know we will need to look after in the future. So that explains the length of the contract and the very high value associated with it.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Really, really helpful overview. Looking to see if any colleagues got any comments. Obviously, Gateway 1, so this will come back to us in due course. I welcome the fact that there's recognition of the appropriate alignment with KCC, with LGR on the horizon. That is, of course, right and appropriate, and certainly recognise that from the perspective of looking for individuals who are committed to the market, having a 5-year contract to begin with is sensible and appropriate in this case. That wouldn't be the case for everything we're tendering at the moment, but I think in this particular case, I'm very supportive of the suggested timescales as laid out. Anything else you wish to say in conclusion, Teresa? No. Thank you. Move to the vote. Those in favour of proceeding with Gateway 1? Agreed. Thank you. Let's move on to the next item, which is Gateway 1 and 3, HRA acquisition of registered provider stock and appointment of specialist advisor. Luella.
Thank you. So this report is seeking, as you just said, to directly appoint Savills as the specialist advisor consultant to support the acquisition of the 791 homes from London and Quadrant into our HRA. So the budget for this has already been approved at full council, and that included associated costs, which is what these form part of. Savills, I mean, if you look at the scale and the complex nature of the work involved, there's a limited market of experienced advisors actually, and a direct award to Savills. They've already completed our initial modelling. It's thought to be the preferred option. Savills will cover the end-to-end transfer, including all the due diligence and valuations, and assist the planning and integration into our HRA stock. So a full-scale advisor consultants. So I'll just leave it there. The preferred option is option 3, and that's to directly appoint them.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from colleagues? I'll certainly say from a finance perspective, this makes logical sense. As you say, the budget's already been agreed for this. My understanding is effectively there are 2 operators in this field, and London and Quadrant are using the other one. Therefore, we have a field effectively of 1. Of course, we have worked with Savills on a number of different matters. They're quite a wide-ranging organisation, so from that perspective, I welcome the fact that they are certainly known to us as a local authority. And this is a really good example of why I've never said as a local authority, or indeed as an employer, we will never get to the point of 0 consultants or specialists, because we wouldn't want to recruit someone permanently to this role, because this is not something we do very often at all. That is rare, but it's important to say that actually this is exactly the reason why, from my perspective, you know, we've had dozens of people convert from temporary to permanent staff. That's fantastic. But occasionally we will need to bring in that expertise. So I'm very supportive of this. Back to you, Luella.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not something we're doing all the time, although we'd love to be buying up council houses. So it is a one-off situation. So we need to appoint the best people to do it, and that's obviously going to be the specialists that are at Savills. I'll just put forward the option there for option 3.
Thank you very much. Are colleagues happy to support the recommendation? Thank you. Let's move to the final item this evening, and thank you for everyone's patience. Gateway 3, EV charging. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Vince. More good climate change action news from this meeting alone. And it's not a disclosable pecuniary interest, but I will declare that I have an interest in this as someone who is currently prevented from making the switch to an electric vehicle, because, like many people in Medway, I don't have a driveway and I don't have access to the ability to charge from my own home. So that is what this Gateway 3 award seeks to change. The council has secured £2.14 million of government local electric vehicle infrastructure funding. I'm not sure if that's pronounced Levi or Levy, or whether you're taking the Chevy to the levy, but we won't refer to the acronym anymore, and that solves the problem. The winning charge point operator set out in the exempt appendix achieved the highest overall tender score following evaluation of quality and commercial submissions, and demonstrated the strongest combination of technical capability, delivery methodology, operational approach, value for money, social value commitments and contract deliverability. The recommended contractor has committed to add to that £2.14 million of government funding, £17.7 million of private sector investment of their own. That's going to enable the rollout of 2,458 charge points across Medway over the term of the 15-year contract. And I think, you know, just to reflect on that for a moment, when you think about the population of Medway, that is a significant footprint. That is, you know, with a sort of back of the fag packet sort of calculation, effectively going to bring charge points to most streets in Medway, I think would be a fair way to assess that. As a matter of priority, though, it's not all going to happen at once. You can't deliver that level of infrastructure all at once. But as a matter of priority, an initial programme of 140 key sites will be delivered within the first 2 years of the contract. And that work, there will be spades in the ground in March or April of next year. So this is not a pie in the sky future, you know, something that's so far down the line that no one is going to see the impact. This is going to happen and happen very soon. And that's going to, I think, increase the adoption of electric vehicles, which will in turn contribute to the air quality improvements we were talking about earlier. The supplier-funded concession model we're using here means that the charge point operator is responsible for investment, installation, operation and maintenance of the network. That's the risk that's placed on them. And that level of private sector investment necessitates a long contract term over which that investment can be recouped. So that explains the 15-year contract. The scale and ambition of this procurement is such that it's also expected to generate future revenue share for Medway residents through payments to the council once agreed usage thresholds are achieved. So not only are we doing this at no cost to Medway residents, but Medway residents will actually share in the success of this scheme as more people adopt electric vehicles and use these charge points. And finally, just want to say the contract of 15 years with an option to extend by a year is again LGR proofed and can transfer to any successor authority. And I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much indeed. Really exciting project. Again, I'm not going to go into the exempt appendix, but I will say the successful provider was substantially ahead of other providers. And I think that's notable. Again, I'm not going to go into closed session, and I think I can get away with saying that without getting in trouble. So congratulations to them, and we look forward to working with them. Simon.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks, Alex, and to the whole team for this. This is long awaited, and it's taken longer than I hoped it would, but now it's here. It's very exciting. The scale of this is huge, and the benefits you've highlighted from a climate perspective are clear in terms of air pollution. For example, Pier Road Air Quality Management Area is looking to come out of that now. Partly, or primarily, I think, partly the numbers of EV vehicles in use in that area. This is a huge thing. Going back to what we're saying about adult care and all that kind of thing, lung health in young children affects them for the rest of their lives, and and that leads to care needed in later life. All those factors. This is one of the solutions for the next generation, and it's fantastic to see it. But as well as the climate and the health benefits, there's economic benefits. Directly, this means that people aren't going to be forking out a fortune on petrol and diesel costs. I know we've talked about it in the transport sort of areas that I work in terms of the number of companies who deliver stuff and vans and all that kind of stuff. They are crying out for this at the moment. The cost of fuel for them is huge. This will make a huge difference to so many people economically as well. So there's health, there's environment, there's economic benefits all coming out of this. it's only going to get increase and get better. So it's really great to see. And it ties in with the other work that we're doing around increasing the use of buses and stuff like that for health and wellbeing reasons as well as economic reasons. So it's brilliant to see. Very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Can't see anybody else. So again, fantastic work, long overdue, and it's going to make a huge contribution, literally a huge contribution as well. So very, very welcome that. And I say the sooner we can get those first spades in the ground, that would be welcome. Of course, I mean, it is worth saying as well, I suspect, as we've seen with other infrastructure examples, I refer specifically to City Fibre, that there may be some disruption. And I think we just need to be open and honest about that. And we need to make sure that the successful providers' communication with streets when they are going to be carrying out this work, I think that needs to be exemplary. So we need to be making sure in those early conversations, and I'm sure that will be part of the formal terms of reference, but I think that's important, not least for all of our collective inboxes. But on that basis, I'll be very happy to support this. Alex, back to you.
Yeah, I can absolutely give that commitment, Vince, but it would be remiss not to say that my inbox already contains inquiries from residents about wanting to have an electric vehicle and inquiring about the processes for running cables along the pavement and various jerry-built solutions that have been used to deliver that. I think that this gives a very clear direction from us at a council level of what we expect for people who, like me, don't have the ability to charge on a driveway, of how we plan to do this and a very clear roadmap of how we get there. Absolutely agree with Simon. You know, once again, it's another one of those subjects that tends to provoke the cranks and environmental wackos from around the world to give their ill-considered opinion on the value of these interventions. Although, strangely, there is one particular wacko who seems quite quiet on the subject, because I think he sells quite a lot of electric vehicles through his company. So that's an interesting bit of business there. But what I would say is, you know, you're absolutely right. We only have to look at the geopolitical consequences of relying so heavily on petrol and diesel and the fluctuations that you get when other individuals choose to create military distractions from their own travails and domestic politics and end up costing us all a lot more at the pump. This gives us the ability, for people who actually profess to be proud patriots, for us to be self-sufficient. We can be self-sufficient in energy, in electricity production in this country, and we can meet that supply without needing to go cap in hand to oligarchs and despots around the world. And wouldn't that be a good place to be? And once again, it's an example of how, from the smallest contracts to the biggest in Medway Council, we are thinking globally and acting locally.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Colleagues, happy to read a recommendation? Thank you. Have a good rest of the evening, what's left, and see you for another Cabinet meeting later in August. 2 for the price of 1 this month. Thanks, everybody.